recently got a new microphone, and the headphones came with them, but apparently they don't want to work.
Looks like a nice pair of headphones. I'm just using cheapy iPhone ones.
It's all good, man. How you doing anyway? How's your day been?
Good. How about yourself?
Yeah, all right, all right. I mean, the world's slowly getting more insane as each day goes by, but I'm trying to
Yep.
keep a level head. But yeah,
Yeah.
I tell you what. I mean, I have to admit, I am getting fed up of the whole geopolitical storm that's just continuously going. And like, recently I've been engaging on Twitter with the whole thing and just talking. And I just got to a point where I'm just done. I'm just done with that because, I was thinking about this, like, oh, what. I got into this because of the whole consciousness side of things, and over time, I've been dragged into all these weird little political dramas and things that have gone on over the past 2 years. And I've just reached a point where I just don't want to talk about it anymore,
Yeah. I've been there for a while, like last couple of years.
Yeah, I've been slow. I've been slow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know, like it's this thing, it's social media. It pulls me in, like, it pulls me in sometimes, and I kind of wrestle back and I'm like, oh, I know I shouldn't be too invested in that. Don't let that get me too bothered. It's all good, it's fine. And then boom, you kind of get pulled back into it. And I've been thinking about it over the past couple of days. I'm like, I need to just distance myself from Twitter. Like Twitter is just it just creates so much drama that doesn't need to exist.
Yep. Yep. I'm at the point now where I just like do my posts and walk away, and
Yeah.
I don't engage with internet drama. It just brings you down, man.
Just brings you down. But you know what? We're here to be talking about all the things that we are interested in, Ryan, and it's always good to speak to you, man. And by the way, just for everyone listening, before we jump into everything, I'd just like to recommend everyone check out Ryan's awesome podcast, Bledsoe Said So. If you like discussions on esotericism, philosophy, symbology, consciousness, and the phenomenon, then you really should check out and support Bledsoe Said So podcast. So links will be in the description box below to check out after this talk. And I love the name. It's a great name, dude.
Thank you. Thank you. It actually just kind of came as a joke, and I like threw it out to make like our team laugh.
Yeah.
And they were like, that's it. That's the name. And it was done.
Yeah, it's a great name, man. It's a great name. I mean, how's the podcast? And you've got like a real setup as well, like a really good setup. I love it. I mean, that's my dream at some point, to have it properly done with lighting and everything. But you guys are early in the doors, and boom, you got yourself a set and you're ready.
Yeah, we just kind of like went with the whole manifestation thing. Like if we make our physical environment reflect like what we want to be, and we show like exactly what we want to show, then we're legit. We're a real show, we're a real program. And that's kind of what I ran with it. I just knew in my head, like, I got to have all the lights and the frames, because our podcast art is like photo frames on like a haunted mansion look. And, you kind of see the vision, you create it in the 3D world, and it's real, so thank you.
Here's me with a bandana, literally tying my microphone to this stand because it's too small for the stand.
Nice.
Ghetto podcasting over here, mate. But yeah, no, you know what? I don't want to waste time kind of going over things that have been repeated on like so many other podcasts, because you've done a lot of interviews. Your father's done a lot of interviews, Chris Bledsoe. And so people who are not familiar with Ryan or his family and their experiences with strange phenomenon, and most notably his father, Chris Bledsoe, and his experiences with, what could be really described as a kind of like an angelic being, or, a female entity that Chris has called the Lady. What I would personally recommend for those listening who aren't familiar with the story is I think it's 4 or maybe a 5-part series by Richard Dolan with your dad. I'll put links in the description box below. Yeah, these are the best interviews in my opinion to get like a really good full rounded idea of the story. So I'll recommend that people do that. We will jump into stuff. That being said, I definitely want to talk about some of the things like the intelligence community interest with your family, and the experience with the Lady, and what your father was told. And I've also got quite a few questions from people in the community that we'll get into later. But
okay.
I think it's to be honest, I was really good. The response from the community, there's some really interesting questions, so I'm excited to jump into that at some point. Just gonna take a drink of water. I have to apologize because I'm coming off the back of a little bit of a cold, so I'm still feeling a little bit ropey in the throat.
Sorry to hear that, man.
It's all good. No COVID.
Good.
Just a normal cold. people still get normal colds, everyone.
Yeah, they're still around.
Yeah, they're still around. They still exist. But yeah, I mean, I think something that I would like to talk about to kind of kick this off is the idea of prophecy, because this is an undeniably large part of not just like your own family's experience, obviously with your father's experience with the lady, but it's a key component of the UFO subject itself. There are prophetic themes within ufology that are comparable, I guess, to kind of like religious archetypes, angels and demons, and good aliens and bad aliens, liberators and manipulators. And because your own dad has had experiences that are kind of prophetic in nature, I suppose my question, just in like a very general sense, is how do you feel about prophecy?
I mean, I grew up with it, to be honest. My dad had his encounter in 2007, the first one. For those that aren't familiar, there's a documentary about it, UFOs Over Earth, Discovery Channel. Not a particularly good documentary. It was a little bit of a smear job, but it is what it is. The core information is there, if people want to watch it and use their discernment. And, since I was like as early as 14, 15 years old, my dad started having these visions about like, war and apocalyptic type scenarios. And we've kind of like privately had these discussions. It's the kind of thing he does not like to speak about publicly, very rarely. I think he may have mentioned some on your show before, some of the things that he's seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, like your particular interview that you did last year with my dad was super good. It's one of my favorite ones out there. Yeah, no problem. And anyway, so then when he met this female entity in 2012, she straight up told my dad, like, this is how it's going to be. There are dark people in power at the top of humanity who are using the book of Revelations as sort of like a playbook, like a script. And on the global stage, I'm talking like what you see on TV, what you see in entertainment, from my terminology, that would be like a stage, right? Shakespeare said the world is a stage, just kind of think out of the box. But the lady told my dad that on the global stage, they're using that book of Revelations as a script to play out this apocalyptic scenario to try to like subjugate humanity. But in the age of Aquarius, it won't succeed. It's just not going to happen. It's going to look bad. Like, honestly, all this war stuff going on, I kind of like knew that it would eventually happen. Who knows? Maybe it's false flag. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just another COVID news cycle where they scare us about it every day for 2 years. So we all live on the edge of our seat. But yeah, I mean, in the global stage, it's going to look really bad before we transition into the age of Aquarius fully.
So how do you feel about, I mean, in general, because I mean, humanity's kind of littered with prophetic messages from different intelligences. I mean, this is actually kind of evident within the scientific community as well. If you go back, I mean, there's a few different people I could draw upon as examples that were divinely inspired, or at least in their understanding, divinely inspired to produce what were eventually becoming scientific models. And I find that really interesting. So I guess what I'm asking as well, just outside of just your own, your dad's experiences, is what do you think the nature of these types of interventions is? Is it all of the same? Is it all coming from the same kind of source, I guess, is what I'm asking.
You mean like the prophetic sources?
Yeah, like the prophetic sources. Is this the, divine angelic beings coming down to try and assist humanity? Or is this, I mean, where do you sit on this whole idea of there being perhaps like a duality, like multiple different types of interests being involved and seeding humanity of information? And what is the nature of prophecy, in your opinion?
Okay, that's a really cool question. I've actually never been asked that. Thank you for not asking me about like spinning UFOs and the kind of drivel that
you know me.
Yeah. Honestly, my whole take on this, living pretty much my entire life with the phenomenon, interacting with very high level intelligence agency individuals and et cetera. I'm kind of parked on the mindset that there is a unified consciousness field. There is a dualistic element to it, just like in Zoroaster, it was Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu. There's, since ancient times, there's always this light and this dark. Like even in the Egyptian mystery systems, there's, Osiris and Horus symbolizing the light, and then you have Set, the eternal darkness, or you have Jesus and Satan, or they might say Jesus and Lucifer. There's always a light and a dark, always. I'm not going to sit here and say that there's no like evil phenomenon, but the way that I understand it to be is not as they tell us, like aliens with these weapons that are trying to like attack humanity or anything like that. In reality, it's entities that don't necessarily even have a physical form, and they leech onto your subconscious mind, and they implant very dark, negative, self-harmful, and in really bad cases, violent thoughts towards other people.
So is that a belief of yours, or is that something that you've been told that you think is real?
Yeah, I 100% believe that. That's
Yeah,
what my dad told me. Yeah,
that they leech
yeah,
off of our emotional kind of bandwidth.
yeah, hmm
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
They
it's funny.
feast on your mind, on your fear, actually.
I saw. I don't know if you were in that Twitter thread, but there was a discussion about that whole thing, and someone was saying, how can someone please explain how that would even be possible? But to be honest, if you think about the fact that we're electrochemical beings and we produce
hmm
electric frequencies in our in our bodies, and our cognition is based on electrochemical exchanges, and we produce a coronal discharge around our bodies, an electromagnetic field, then
Yeah,
why, I mean, plants use sunlight and they photosynthesize and they gather energy from that environment, so why could something perhaps not utilize your emotional output? Because
yeah,
they've even discovered this. I mean, there's been scans of the brain and scans of the body with high emotional states, so we know that there's actually a much higher level of energetic output when there's high emotional states at play. So I mean,
yeah.
constant levels of anxiety, constant levels of fear, my god, you're going to be lighting up like a candle. But with this energy that, yeah, I guess if they if we're going to expand into a vast cornucopia of different intelligences and things that might exist, even if it's not necessarily a self-aware intelligence, but some sort of animal that we don't fully understand that can leech off of energy. It's an interesting thing. I mean, it's pretty scary.
Yeah, and even like if you dive into esoteric circles, particularly like Rosicrucians, Freemasons, Hermetic Order, the Golden Dawn, the really big ones that I feel like most people should at least read about and kind of brush up on them. That's one of the things that they'll teach you in private is when you're trying to reach a certain effect with your consciousness, when you're trying to, make subtle changes on reality through your intention and your will, you're supposed to charge that with a high state of emotion. There's something about the emotions that we experience, that pass through the, so to speak, heart center. If we really were like beings with metaphysical energy centers, well, according to the ancients, the heart center is the most powerful. So if there's any merit to that, I don't really think it's that crazy. We can sit here and we can come up with scientific explanations. Not you, but skeptics. I think yours is great. But people like, how can you explain that? Well, I don't think everything is easily explainable. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a pretty crazy universe out there.
It is a pretty crazy universe, and I have to draw upon my own personal experiences. At the end of the day,
Yeah.
I've exactly as you described, got into states of what really did feel like high energy states, because I was in like a
hmm
meditative state, projecting intentions, and I had I had visitations from these orange orbs of light that came over my house, and so
Wow.
I know that there is this weird component to consciousness that connects with some phenomenon. Like this
hmm
is the thing. Like some people may have had much more vivid and kind of detailed experiences, but all I know, if I'm going to draw upon my own subjective evidence, is consciousness can do stuff that allows something to interact with you, and it will show itself. That's it. That's all I really know. I don't know what they are. They didn't tell me what they are. Definitely wasn't drones or lanterns. It was something anomalous, have no idea what. And so for me, I'm stuck in this position of, I hear people's really detailed stories and it's like, right, like, okay, that could be another component to this. But when it comes to my own personal experiences, I at the very least, I know that consciousness doesn't just operate within the physical restraints of the body. I know that, but I
hmm
don't understand it. I can't quantify it. I can't do it to the satisfaction of a quantum physicist or a scientist. That's where we have to draw on the intuition. One person who I really love within the scientific community, even though he's no longer here, is Nikola Tesla, because he had such
Right.
a brilliant connection to the esoteric whilst also respecting the scientific method. There's one of my favorite quotes from him about, and people will have heard me say it so many times now, but it's the quote where he says that there is a core at the center of all things, like the universe, where we draw all of our strength, all of our inspiration. Everything comes from
hmm
this core. I haven't discerned the location emanation of this core, but I know that it exists. And I really love that, because it's that whole idea of here's someone that totally respected the scientific method, could draw things from this ether, from this kind of like hyperspatial ether of the imagination and bring it into physical reality and create tools and create innovations. But he knew that stuff was coming from some larger place. It was flowing through him. He recognized that. He didn't know what it was, but he knew it was bigger than him. And that's the kind of approach I think is necessary. It's that intuitive knowing there is something bigger. I can't fully quantify it. I don't think it can be quantified, but you have to pay attention to life, because my God, it's there. It is there,
Yeah, there's definitely an intelligent design behind life itself. I mean, you get into understanding sacred mathematics, which was taught originally as we know it by like maybe the Babylonians, but particularly the Egyptians, brought to the West by Pythagoras. But there's this kind of like secret concept. I'm not sure if you've read the Da Vinci Code. It's kind of like woven into the book, but it's known as like, the golden ratio, Fibonacci sequence, also known as phi. And they can very easily identify that throughout nature, this sacred ratio, which is, by the way, it's a ratio that signifies infinity. If you were to draw its image, if you were to take this mathematical ratio and turn it into an image, it's a spiral which goes on infinitely. And they're able to very easily determine that behind all life that spawns in nature, this math is encoded into that life. Life itself is infinite and intelligently designed.
Yeah.
But it's like, how do we measure that intelligence? I don't know.
Well, this is something that continuously interests me, and I have to admit that I find the material reductionist perspective on the emergence of consciousness to be, I find that there's an unnecessary extra step involved in that type of model that actually challenges it a lot more than I think people realize, because it's this whole idea that obviously if you're a material reductionist physicist, you believe that matter is blind and unintelligent, just colliding with itself and kind of creating things over time. But the whole idea of deriving intelligence from something that is absent intelligence makes very little sense to me. I don't understand how can you create an intelligent structure absent any sort of intelligence existing within it, even at like a basic like evolutionary coding level? Because if you think of like a computer, like this is something I've been thinking about for quite a while, this whole idea of like a self-assembling quantum computer, right? Because if you look at the human being, a human being, to me at least, is basically like a biological quantum computer. It's got this exquisite kind of interface through the nervous system and the electrochemical reactions in the brain and the body, and its way of drawing data in and rendering data from our environment into a usable format. We're a bit like a computer. And then if you look at the consciousness side of it and the idea that our consciousness can connect to multiple places or all points in space and time, we are like a quantum computer that connects to all these different nodes on a network. But the thing is, right, if you build a quantum computer, if you take it all apart, like an actual one, not us, if you get an actual quantum computer, you take it all apart, all those components aren't necessarily intelligent, right? But then when you put them all together, it creates this intelligent structure that can operate and do these amazing things. But you still needed a human to build that intelligent structure. It didn't just assemble, right. The parts didn't just all kind of collide together and randomly create a quantum computer. But we're to expect that over billions of years of evolutionary processes and developmental processes, the emergence of this structure called a human being that's come out of this kind of genetic swarming on the planet is just, it just randomly happened. I mean, it just seems so counterintuitive to what we know about how you create intelligent things and how things get formed. There has to be some sort of guiding creative hand. And right. So I think that it makes a lot more sense for there to be some sort of embedded intelligent substrate within reality that moves things around over time. And that's what we call evolution. And it's slowly moving these things around.
Like a program.
Yeah, exactly. So I struggle with this kind of material reductionist perspective on it, because I just think it has this unnecessary step of like, well, where the hell does the intelligence come from then?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know how deep you want to go, but then you start really studying these esoteric circles. Like particularly, there's a very heinous individual named Aleister Crowley. Okay, so for anybody that doesn't know, he's probably the most influential dark occultist of all time. And just a quick little tidbit, the word occult doesn't mean evil, dark, black magic practices. It just means hidden things. Like, for example, chakras is a cult, or like meditation. Technically, in Christian America, or maybe Christian England or wherever, that would be considered an occult practice. Anything that's not Christian, right? Doesn't mean evil. I just want to throw that out there. But there is some dark occult stuff. And Aleister Crowley in particular, very influential figure in these nasty little underground circles, wrote about the Aeon of Horus, where the goal of these influential societies was to try to push a atheistic, secularistic, kind of like no spiritual, no belief in a higher power for the masses, right? That's kind of like the goal that they were trying to perpetrate on humanity. And I mean, I don't know, if you look now, it seems like that really may be happening. Using the scientific community to push that on us through school, through the Rockefeller education system, would make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, this is, I mean, the whole Aleister Crowley rabbit hole is a deep one, and
yes,
I mean,
it is.
obviously it leads to people like Jack Parsons and the foundation of NASA, and then obviously NASA is such
and ufology, and Scientology.
Exactly. I mean, I talk to Jean-Luc and John Majerowski a lot, and like literally every single road, and they always point this out to me because I'll say something, they go, but that links back to this. Every road seems to lead back to like the occult or like some level of magic ceremonial processes going on, and it's such a strange thing. Like I've started to realize over time. I mean, my introduction to this subject was through consciousness anyway, but not necessarily understanding
from that angle.
Not that angle. And like over time, I've been introduced to how that is a really prevalent part of the issue. And it fascinates me, and it's also disturbing.
Yeah, I mean, I can personally tell you a nice handful of the like CIA and intelligence officials that I've met. I've had one-on-one conversations, or my father has as well, about this subject, about the occult, and even Jack Parsons and how it's related to ufology itself. And they pretty much are all in the agreement that UFOs and like what my father says, this is why they come to us. This is why they know we're telling the truth, because it vibes with what they really understand at the highest levels. That it is in fact an occult phenomenon. It's a spiritual consciousness, energy phenomenon. It's when you talk to these very high level intelligence guys, they're not asking like, what color were they? Were they green? Did they have scales? They know that's not true. They know that's not the reality of the situation. But the masses get the news version that talks about a blip on a radar, and everyone goes nuts about that for 3 or 4 years, and it's just the way it is. But yeah, I mean, when you get truly deep down the rabbit hole of like the UFO phenomenon, and I got to say, like, when you land on the phenomenon that my family in particular has experienced, and others out there as well, you begin to realize that it is sort of like an occult phenomenon. Like, they called them nature spirits in Egypt, they called them angels in the Bible, they called them genie in the Middle East, fairies in Ireland. It's all the same thing.
I think it's the same thing. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, the ancients were seeing these things, and they were describing them in the way that they knew how.
I think you're right. I think it's a cultural lens. I think that it's some sort of projected lens, which means that even we're probably not interpreting them in their true form, or whatever the true.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't think the five senses can interpret their true form. I don't believe that they have a true physical form. I believe that they can appear that way, that can stimulate our mind in a way that we understand what we're dealing with. And that actually was told to me by the CIA. So
yeah, well, it makes sense. I mean, it certainly makes me think about what I saw. I mean, on 4 separate occasions, these orange orbs. I've seen other things, but these are the ones that really are like the wow ones for me personally. And I've had people say, well, maybe they weren't really orange orbs. It's just what your mind was able to comprehend. It's like, hell, that could be true, man. I have no idea what they were. And it's a really interesting thing that there's such a wide variety of experiences, though. I mean, I've asked a lot of people this, but what do you think about like the whole abduction phenomenon of like alien greys and probes and experimentation and that kind of stuff? I mean, do you think that that's just a cultural lens, or is that?
I tend to not believe those stories. And let me tell you why. Because I've been dealing with this incredible phenomenon since I was literally 13 years old. I mean, most kids when they're 13, especially in our generation, they're playing video games, they're going home and they're talking about girls, like they're not seeing light beings. It was kind of a shocking twist to my childhood. And ever since I was a small child, I've really had this on the front of my mind every day of my life, pretty much, and really just kind of just marinated in this lifestyle. I just wanted to make that very clear. It's basically the main part of my life is this experience, the UFOs. Anyway, and from everything that I've experienced since I was young, I have never seen any sort of like classical alien phenomenon. I wouldn't be so sure to say that kind of thing does not exist. But the very reason that I don't believe that truly happens is I've never met anyone credible that looked me in the face and told me they were brought on a ship, and I'm like, I feel like you're telling me the truth. I've just never met anybody that was credible with that kind of story. And I've met thousands of people throughout my life, coming to our house, seeing us on TV, thousands or at least 1,000, being like a popular target for being studied for UFOs. Reason number 2, I've been told by different intelligence officials that 95% of the crap that you see on the internet about UFOs and in TVs and movies, it's all programming. It's all tricking the masses. None of it's real. It's all fake. It's all disinformation. And I honestly believe that. I mean, I haven't seen anything that suggested otherwise.
So what in your opinion is the closest to the truth outside of all of the noise that's being generated?
The closest to the truth, I think. I think you've got it, man. I think you figured it out. It's consciousness that these beings they're entities that exist in a realm that is eternal, and that when they appear in our realm, they take a form so that our limited 5 senses can understand we're dealing with something much greater than ourselves. And then, particularly in the last 100 years, you've had these billionaire tycoon families like the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, others like, the banking dynasties, and they've really got their grips on the media. We've only been watching movies for like 100 years. You know what I mean? We've only been really having televised news for the last 100 years. And really, they didn't even start talking about aliens in the public until about the 1950s. So just think about it. These groups, for the last 100 years, have just totally duped humanity into believing their material reductionist view. And they just show us whatever they want to show us. And we just sit down and we just watch TV, eat our popcorn, and we just eat up everything like, pigs on a trough. I mean, it's that simple. Like I 100% believe that the physical alien threat bullcrap, I don't believe a word of it.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, the underlying hypocrisy with material reductionist perspectives, like just drawing this back into like science, is it's really interesting to me. I mean, it's I think a lot of the times it's an unconscious hypocrisy just born out of not knowing these things. But I mean, if we take, for example, and this is drawing into like the phenomenon and how it does have an impact on science, even though they don't really want to recognize that. The man considered as the father of modern day rationalism or material reductionism is Rene Descartes. He's typically seen as one of the primary people. And something a lot of people don't know about Rene Descartes, you might do, is that he was inspired to found the modern day principles of material reductionism or like rational scientific doctrine through meeting an angel.
Wow.
Yeah, he basically when he was a soldier in Prague, he was having a fevered sleep, and he was in this like fever dream, and an angel came to him in this fevered state and told him it's something along the lines of the truth or the secret of the universe can be found in measure and number. And it was something along those lines. And so my point here is that the person we consider the father of modern day reductionism within science, which is a perspective that basically finds no space for the paranormal and considers it all to be irrational, their entire foundation was pretty much built upon the inspirations of a man having a paranormal experience.
Not to mention probably his most famous, I wouldn't say quote, but thing he's known for is how he believed that the pineal gland was the vestigial third eye and the seat of the soul.
Right. So this, this is the thing. We've got these examples from science where there has been this type of divine intervention. At least that's how it's been interpreted. I mean, another example, what's his name, Augustus Kekule, he's the inventor of the benzene ring. After struggling for like a really long time to find a way of visually representing the structure, he had a vivid dream of the Ouroboros serpent taking its tail into its mouth, and then he woke up from this dream and he jotted down the first benzene ring. So scientists don't like it when you bring these things up, the so-called paranormal, or the idea of having messengers or prophecies, inspirational interactions with the unknown. These things are very much present in the foundations of our modern scientific infrastructure, but we just don't like to talk about it.
Right. There's this scientist who's kind of obscured. He was a heavy hitter in the scientific community, had a lot of advancements that we still use today, but not many people know about him. His name was Marcel Vogel, and he was particularly into crystals. He worked for IBM. I'm pretty sure it was IBM. It was a major computer company. And he started having dreams about the Kabbalah tree of life.
Oh, wow.
The geometry from the Kabbalah tree of life, because it is a geometric symbol at the end of the day. Anyway, so he had dreams that the geometry of the Kabbalah tree of life could be cut into a clear quartz crystal, which would enable it to have extreme healing properties, transformational properties in other areas, and also technological benefits. And he actually is the founder and inventor of the LCD liquid crystal display, which we've used in TVs for at least the last 20 years, and other things too under IBM. And he did this at IBM facilities too. This was real scientific research that he developed from a dream, an occult dream, cut the math of it into crystals. It's called a Vogel crystal. And it's, that happens a lot. And particularly when I've met some members of the Department of Defense and the CIA, that's one of the things they told us, that the super geniuses throughout time, especially in the most recent history with these extreme technological advances like Tesla, even some people now, they receive their inspiration from the phenomenon itself. And we were basically told to understand that the word genius actually etymologically comes from the ancient understanding that you had like a genie on your shoulder telling you information. So, yeah.
Do you think that's going on with Tesla? I mean, he's been very. I say Tesla. Did you mean Elon Musk when you were saying geniuses?
No, I meant Nikola Tesla.
Oh, okay.
Like he was a divinely inspired genius.
Right.
I mean, Elon Musk could be. I don't know. He's never come out and said like something speaks to him, but.
No, for sure. Yeah, sorry. I thought you said modern day, so I was. I thought you meant Tesla, the company. But you're absolutely right.
No. Yeah, I meant Nikola Tesla.
I'm pretty sure Tesla actually said that he believed he was speaking to intelligences from Venus once. Is that true? Did you know about
Elon Musk or Nikola?
No. Nikola Tesla. I believe there was this whole thing of communicating with intelligences from Venus.
I'm not sure if he said Venus, but I do remember he said he was communicating with some form of intelligence. Yeah. For sure. He was a pretty spiritual guy. I mean, he believed the entire universe was energy, frequency, and vibration.
Yeah, exactly. And he's one of my favorite people to draw upon, just because he to me, he represents everything that I think we need to be looking at when it comes to like a symbiosis between science and spirit, or physics and metaphysics, whatever you want to call it. Mind and matter. Like he represented that. I often wonder what we were, where we would be if he had been given the reins. But a lot of people say, oh, we would not be where we were now, where we are now with Tesla, because it would have been wireless and we wouldn't have all the technology. But we'd have different technologies. We'd have
free, unlimited energy.
Yeah, I think we would have probably been flying UFOs by now.
yeah, we would have been flying. It would have been a total flight-based society. I mean, he had levitation in like 1910. They locked him up because he figured out energy is free and it swims in the air all around you. They locked him up for the rest of his life.
Pretty sure he kind of speculated and created a schematic for the best conductor platform to be able to be a flight platform, and it was a saucer, and it wasn't like he'd drawn from UFO lore. That was just in his
that wasn't out yet.
No, exactly. Like he was just like, no, this is the best, this makes sense, like a saucer shaped craft would be the best conductor. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
No, I mean, again, like I believe that it's very possible that there could be those kinds of crafts. I tend to not believe anything coming from like mainstream sources. I don't buy it.
I hear you, man. I hear you. I mean, do you think that so where do you sit on like craft being reverse engineered or materials being gathered? Like, where do you sit on all of that?
Well, I definitely believe that. I mean, I've touched some of these materials. And it's just the way I understand it is that these beings can manifest whatever they want. Here's my problem with ufology, my problem with the entire subject in general. Everyone's so worried about, are they real, or at least they were before 2017, and now they're worried about, like, oh, I like this craft, I see it on Twitter all the time, there's a TR-73B or whatever, or they've got a black triangle craft and this, and it's all about the craft and the craft and the craft. And all I really care about is, what really are they, and why are they here? What do they have for humanity? Like, to me, it's kind of painful to watch the world be focused on like the wrong things. They just think UFOs are cool. Typical people on the internet think, oh yeah, UFOs are cool, I've seen them in movies, I love them, I'm a UFO freak. And then it's like, they
don't understand the kind of deep, the resonance, like the esoteric side to this. I know. And the thing is, I think for a lot of people, it's not an easy pill to swallow. I mean, like, there's a lot of crazy people in the UFO community, and there's a lot of crazy people in the consciousness side of it as well. And like, that's from someone who is very much embedded in that side of the community and loves it and appreciates it and listens to people. But you still, it's difficult when I guess there's just such a mashup of opinions and ideas, and it's like, oh no, it's the galactic councils from Zeta Reticuli. No,
and the deep space program.
Yeah, exactly. There's just so many colliding perspectives, and I think for a lot of people, it's intimidating, and it's just like, well, this all just sounds a bit crazy. It's information overload, and you hear one story from one person, another story from another. So, I don't know what I truly think, but I feel like what you're saying is pretty much in alignment with how I think it is. I'm just not ready to, I'm never really ever ready to say this is the way it is, like, because I don't know fully, I haven't experienced it myself, but I definitely have some strong intuitive kind of inclinations as to what this represents. And like you, I do think it's kind of what we would at least we would say it's spiritual in
and that can be a broad understand. That doesn't mean like go to church. That doesn't mean that.
Exactly. I think that's the thing. It's like a trigger word for a lot of people, the word spiritual. And that's why I try and be careful when I use it, but it's a very broad meaning, and it's the only thing we can really draw upon is it, like, intuitive, but really spiritual is the better descriptor of it. And like I said, it doesn't mean religious.
I think at the end of the day, all that really matters, Jay, is not that people know exactly what they are and everybody has their sighting and everybody has their experience. Listen, I can tell you, I've had lots of experiences, and I've had people come to my house and have experiences. Many of them break down, they're in tears, they're terrified, it messed my childhood up. Like, this isn't the kind of thing that's just like cool. Like, it's a very extreme phenomenon. It appears in ways that can be very overwhelming to the senses. It can cognitively destroy people who are not in the state of mind to handle it. I think people should stop thinking so hard about, like, what are they? Are they real? I think all that really matters at the end of the day, based on what these entities told my dad, all that really matters at the end of the day is that we shed our fear about the phenomenon. Who cares, if they're really this or they're really that? All that truly matters is that we have nothing to fear from the phenomenon. All we truly have to fear is human nature itself and how we treat our neighbor, and that it's important that we cultivate and truly intuitively understand that we are supposed to love our neighbor and treat them as we treat ourselves. Because at the end of the day, we're killing ourselves. The human races. I mean, just got through a plague, whether it's, real or not, or propaganda or not, doesn't matter. We still all lived through it. We still all suffered through it, as a human race. Now we're looking at war, and it's like, dude, people still are like scared of aliens or wondering what they are. That doesn't really matter right now. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
It does matter. It does matter.
No, I mean it matters, but I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying, because I felt similar. I've been sitting here, over the past kind of week and thinking to myself, like, my God, I can't really focus on UFOs that much right now. There's just so much going on. The human story is at such a pivotal moment. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, it's incredible in a bad way, but you can just feel it. It's feverishly on high alert now, and I still, even though I don't really, I guess a bit like Tesla, I don't know the location of it, I just know it exists. There's a sense of optimism that we are just going through a transformational period, and there is certain levels of stress and certain accelerants and catalysts that are needed in order to push you, just like you have in your own personal life. I mean, my God, I can draw upon so many different experiences, even ones of quite recently in my personal life, where I've gone, oh man, that sucks. And then I look back and I realize, oh, that was necessary. I get it. That was necessary. And I think that the same can be said for humanity right now. I think that, in all honesty, the level of intensity is actually the best evidence to me that we're going through a transformation.
Oh yeah, definitely. I 100% believe, down to the very pit of my soul, this is what the lady told my dad in 2012, that again, like, they're going to make very bad things happen globally to deceive humanity into believing it's an apocalyptic end time scenario. But right on the other side, we're going to enter an age of peace, because of the astrological shift into the age of Aquarius. And I do believe that we're on the cusp of that. I think the consciousness is going to be more, I guess, understood. I don't know that we could ever discover like the source of consciousness. I suppose if we did that, reality might fall apart, and we might not need to be physical beings anymore. You know, if we truly understood consciousness,
the game would be over.
Yeah, the game would be over, right? But I do think that that what we're seeing right now in the world is kind of like the old vestiges of power kicking and screaming as it's kind of phasing out. It's going to look really bad, but what I truly want to express to people is, yeah, it's going to look bad, but you know, it could be way worse. You could be there right now. Well, there are people there right now, but I'm just saying, like, you just got to hold on to the hope that there is a brighter future. You know, there's a new age coming. At least I believe it.
Can we talk about your dad's experience with the lady a little bit?
Sure. Where do you want to go with it? It's an in-depth experience.
It's definitely an in-depth experience. I mean, I guess first of all, are you able to just kind of explain these encounters a little bit for those who don't know anything about it? Just a bit of an overview of what exactly this situation is.
Sure. Do you want to just do the lady one or the 2007 one as well? Because
what do you think would be best to give clarity?
I can run through the original experience. It's just a long experience. I'm going to paraphrase, and I again want to point people to the fact that there is a documentary. I think it's a 14-year-old documentary. So like, if you're really interested in the original encounter told from my father, I would say just go on Amazon. It's like $2 or $3 now. UFOs Over Earth, episode 1, Chris Bledsoe. But I'm going to run through that. Very long story short, it's 2007. My dad's in a really bad spot in life. Just sold his multi-million-dollar business. Very depressed. Very at the end of his road, just like wanting to give up on life, literally. And he's going fishing on a Friday night with my oldest brother, Chris Jr., who at the time is 17 years old. And he has 3 of his contractors, like, you know, employee contractors. They just finished a job building a house. And anyway, so they're fishing on the Cape Fear River out in the country, North Carolina, very secluded area off of a highway, you know, near trailers. It's not even like there's neighborhoods nearby, it's trailers. And anyway, so the point being there, it's deep in the woods, nobody's around. They can kick and scream all they want, no one can hear them. And they, so dad splits off from the group because he's just not enjoying the fishing. It's about 5 p.m, but it's January, so it gets dark a little early. It was just before dark, so I'd say it was maybe like 4:30. Anyway, he walks back up the trail, half-mile walk, 15 minutes through the woods, gets to the top of the trail. The whole time he's walking through this trail, there's rustling in the leaves that's really freaking him out. And he's like getting down on his hands and knees. He's looking under the bushes, trying to figure out what it is. He's been a hunter his whole life, out in the dark woods at 4 or 5 a.m, hunting deer, bear. He's not scared of the woods, but this scared him. This is the first time he was ever truly scared in the woods. He couldn't figure out what this noise was. When he would stop walking, the noise would stop. When he would start walking, it would pick back up, just like a creature or something in the woods. Gets to the top of the trail, which is at an incline, so he's kind of like walking uphill. So when he gets to the end of the trail at the top of the hill, he sees 2 really big, bright, fiery orange balls, basically like big balls of fire, as big or bigger than the sun on the horizon. Actually, at first he thought it was the sun, but then he realized there were 2. And by the time he realized that, a third one shoots up right beside him, and dad's freaking out like, oh my God, this is not of this earth. This is aliens. It's something. He turns around and he runs back down the trail. And by the time he gets to the bottom of the trail, it's pitch black night. The truck is in a different location. The fire they had going is out. The guys are not fishing anymore. My brother Chris Jr. is frantic, and he's running around like, where have you been? Where have you been? We've been looking for you for hours. Well, just as a little paraphrase, through the documentary investigation, they did determine that my dad had about 4 hours of missing time. From my dad's perspective, the whole walk up and back was no more than 30 minutes. Could have been less, actually, because he ran back. And from the other guy's perspective, my dad was missing 4 hours, and they did do a full hypnotic regression. It's not covered on the documentary. They cut that out. I did cover it on episode 17 of Bledsoe Said So. I'm pretty sure no, I'm sorry. That's part 2. That's the lady regression. Part 1 would be episode 9 of Bledsoe Said So. So if you want to hear the transcript of the regression, I did get it. Anyway, so back to that night, while it's still happening, my dad finds out that Chris Jr. saw 2 entities in the woods that he described with, like, each of them had red eyes, and they just stared at my brother. One of them constantly would look at my brother, and my brother was like frozen in place. He couldn't move. For 2 hours, he sat there kind of like paralyzed. And when my dad gets back, they ran off and they like literally dove into a tree stump and just disappeared. They went invisible. They all freak out. Like they realize something's going wrong. And then one of them shouts, look, and they look up in the sky, and it looks like 8 stars scrambled around. Like if you just see the stars up at night, imagine them just moving around. They're just like scrambling. And then one of them shoots down and lands on the other side of the river, big, bright white. I guess you could say craft, even though they look like light. They all get in the truck. They speed out of there. They're thinking it's the end of the world. And when they get to the top of that path, there's another kind of like craft on the road blocking their truck. Okay. Some point the craft disappears. They all get home one by one. The guys are freaking out, fighting about who gets to go home and see their families one last time before the world ends. And, because they thought the world was ending. Dad and Chris Jr. get home. And to get to the end of that part, that night, Dad sees one of those little short entities in our backyard face to face. And it tells him, it was either that night or the next night. He saw it twice, but just, rushing through the story. This is in the documentary. But anyway, so when he sees this entity, either the night of or the next night, it tells him, like, you don't understand. We're not here to hurt you. We're here to help you. That day after Dad's initial encounter, he never suffered from Crohn's disease ever again, which is a chronic disease that there is currently no cure. Never took another Crohn's disease medication. And then the rest is history. The documentary crew came after we sent the report to MUFON. They did the documentary. Okay, so there's no documentary on this, so I'll go into a little more detail. But 5 years later, in 2012, Dad, so everybody knew who we were, at least in the UFO crowd, like studying ufology. And Dad, actually our whole family was so ridiculed because of the documentary and how we were portrayed. Dad didn't want to speak publicly ever again. He was sick of Hollywood. He was sick of doing like conferences and things of the like. So 2012 comes around. My dad's really in depression. 5 years of darkness is what we kind of like to call it, to refer to that time. And we privately would let people come see us at our home, like people that really believed us and just wanted to hear the story in person. And it made us feel really like validated to know that there were real people that believed us. And hundreds of people have come over the last 15 years. But like I said, in those 5 years, Dad never spoke publicly. He got asked all the time to go to conferences, but he was never going to do it again. But the week of Easter of 2012, Dad goes to sleep one night. Actually, I think it was the day after Easter. I'm pretty sure. And he hears a voice at 3 a.m., like a kind of like a deep, manly voice, and it says, "Arise." And Dad juts out of bed, and it tells him, "Get dressed." And he gets dressed. He goes to the backyard, and he sees these tall beings that are kind of like wearing these cloaks. Like they just look like cloaked. And these beings lead him through our backyard, which is a 6-acre property out in the country with woods all around. So it's pretty dark. To the woods where we have these dog kennels, because we were a hunting family. So we, at any given time, we had like 12 or 13 dogs on the property, and like hounds and things like that. And anyway, so these beings hand him this little thing that kind of like looks like, the way my dad describes it is, imagine you had a small dog like a Chihuahua with kind of like not super long fur, and it seemed to have like legs on either side, but no head. It was like this symmetrical little thing. It didn't have a head. It didn't have a mouth. It didn't have a face. It was this little thing. Anyway, when he held it, the being said, "This is your burden. Don't lose it. This is your burden to keep." And every time Dad would, he would try to like put it away or whatever, you know, he's walking with it and it's like pricking him. He got the sensation that it was painful. It was hurting him. And he gets through the yard. He throws it in the kennel, slams the kennel shut. About the time he turns around, he sees an etheric bull. Now, for those who might not know what etheric means, think like a ghost, think like Casper, kind of like see-through, emitting a little light, etheric, like ethereal. And he sees this etheric bull charges through my dad, and it feels like an extremely powerful force of wind, knocks my dad on his back. He rolls over, gets up on his hands and knees, and by the time he's on his knees looking up, there's about a 4 or 5 foot tall woman, a white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes. And she's floating 4 or 5 feet off the ground, looking down at my dad. And she has a white dress from her neck to her feet that's twinkling like the stars. And she tells my dad, "You know why I'm here. This experience that you've had is your burden to tell the world. You've been quiet for too long, and now you got to go out and start talking again." And she told him that the age of Aquarius is coming, that they showed him the pyramids and the Sphinx. And she said that when the red star Regulus aligns with the gaze of the Sphinx just before dawn in the constellation Leo, that we would enter a new knowledge, that we would phase into Aquarius or whatever. And she did not give a date on that, but she just gave the alignment. And she said that there is a dark group of people, pretty much like, you know, at the top of humanity, the most powerful people in the world. If you could fathom whatever you can imagine the most powerful people are, to me personally, I would think it's the richest people in the world. That's just my 2 cents. It's pretty common sense. The people that own the media. But anyway, she said these people would be using biblical scripture in order to make it play out on a global geopolitical scale to scare the hell out of humanity and kind of like trick us into believing the apocalypse is really happening, and therefore it will really happen. Because if we all believe the prophecy, we just made it come true, you know? And she said the thing that's going to stop it is if we all learn the truth that these beings are about God, that consciousness is real, that every blade of grass, every rock, every drop of water has consciousness and is equal. Me and you, we're equal. Everybody's equal. We're all part of God. We're all part of consciousness. That when we all learn that we will have the power to stop it as a human race. We will stop it when we all learn the truth that consciousness is real. And that's the majority of what she said. She said this is a game. Our soul comes here to learn, to find true love, like love of other people, love of consciousness, and, you know, the truth. You come here kind of like a spiritual boot camp to learn these lessons so that you're ready to go to the next life in the spirit world. It's kind of like an evolution of consciousness is how she made my dad understand it. That eventually we will be like the beings in another life.
So what happened to the furry thing?
Oh, everybody asks that. My dad has never told it, but what the lady told my dad, actually I have it in my notes, because I could sit here and tell you, or I could just read it to you and you'll get the actual answer. But he did another hypnotic regression on that one. And what it was it was a symbolic item. It was representative of let's see. Do you mind if I find it real quick?
No, go ahead.
Oh, you know what? The other thing she said is that the true apocalypse will be the revelation of the truth, that consciousness is real. And, you know, consciousness is God. Like, people are turned off by the word God. I'm not telling you to go to church. I just am trying to tell people that there is a higher intellect. There is a higher power.
Consciousness is the creative force. It is the force.
Yeah. There is a creative intelligence that roots for us and made us for a real reason. It wasn't random. But yeah, so she said that that's the true apocalypse that will happen in our lifetime. And the other thing she said is that the earth is a living being. It has its own consciousness. And that right now the earth is heavily affected by the collective fear of humanity. And that's why these bad things are happening, because we're kind of like manifesting it by living in fear. It's constantly pushed on us every day, especially in the last 2 years. Actually, especially now. And that the only thing that will save us from the earth physically destroying us as a species in order to protect itself, she said it'll shake us off like fleas if we don't cut out the fear crap, because our fear vibrations are harming the earth, which is a living being. The only thing that will save the earth is if we all understand that love is more powerful than fear, and that's how we have to be, in kind of like a metaphorical sense. You have to vibrate with love. But anyway, so the thing is, she said everything is a living being with a consciousness. The trees, even the grass that we walk on, is consciousness that is pre-programmed to this world, just like we are. We're all part of her, like the mother female entity. She called herself the mother of reality itself, like the literal progenitor and creator of reality and all life. And the regressionist in particular asked my dad, like, what was the object she gave you, the one you had just asked about, the prickly thing? And what Dad came back with is it was symbolic. It was symbolic of our world, of the natural world. It's the keys, which is the symbol of the natural world. We're all part of nature, and everything is a part of nature and the forces of nature. It was nothing other than a symbol. It had no legs, no head, or no tail. So I said it had legs, but I guess I remember that part wrong. It just looked like the torso of, like, he always described it as just like the body of a chihuahua, like just this small little object. And it's symbolic because it was alive, but it didn't know where to go. And the collective humanity is the same way. We're kind of like gnashing in all directions, and we're freaking out, and we're all in total fear and chaos. We have no direction of like where we should go to further and benefit humanity. And dang, I accidentally scrolled up a little bit, but that's essentially what it was. It was just a little object to symbolize
did it just disappear from the kennels?
Yeah. It just disappeared.
So it was probably, I mean, I imagine like a kind of like a tulpa, like a psychic object, something that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think their crafts are. I think their crafts are like psychic objects. They can just create whatever they want. Jim Semivan, I'm sure you know who he is, but for the listener who doesn't know, he is the head CIA guy for like To the Stars, like Tom DeLonge's UFO company. And particularly, he's one of the guys that we chatted with quite a bit. And I was at a party, like an Easter party. It wasn't like a party, but like an Easter family party of some friends of ours in Philadelphia. Jim was there too, mutual friends. And that was one of the things he told us, was that they have observed and understood that there is a level of manifestations of entities that interact with our reality. And at the very highest level, including like the lady and other godlike beings, that they're so consciously aware that they could just destroy anything with their thoughts. Like if they really wanted to, they could just destroy a planet with their thoughts. But that's not their intention. They're not these evil beings, But basically, what I gather from that is that they fully are aware and understand that these beings, this phenomenon, is psychic in nature. It's conscious. And I don't just mean like conscious like you and me are awake. I mean like it operates in the realm of consciousness.
Yeah. Well, I think that, I mean, this is just a human saying this, but I think that you would, at that level of conscious development, I don't think the idea of wanting to destroy planets makes any sense whatsoever, because you look at developmental process, at least here, and like, there's conflict because we're a primate species and we're still growing out of our kind of primordial natures, and so there's a lot of conflict and aggression, and this is all here and packaged up in the human experience. But we can see that there's a developmental process going on where we're refining. I mean, we look back through time and we are getting better. Like, we are getting better over time. We still have a lot of creases to iron out, but I just imagine that a being at a level of conscious development that is, just so far beyond our own, it doesn't make sense to me that it would want to act in this kind of petty way of being aggressive and combative. I mean, I could be wrong, and maybe there's powerful malevolent energies, like this whole idea of drawing off of psychic negativity. If that's true, then perhaps there are really powerful beings on the flip side of things. But I mean, do you think that that's a possibility?
I don't. I think we're creating them with our fear, like psychic phenomenon.
Oh wow. I think that we're generating these creatures from our anxiety.
I don't think nature is inherently evil. If you think about it, if you look at the animal kingdom, except for really intelligent beings, like like certain types of primates and apes and things like that. Sure, they have incredibly like
Aggression and
just a discriminate aggression where they'll
yeah,
like form
yeah.
gangs, but they're more similar to us than like a tree or a plant or whatever. I don't think that nature is inherently evil. I just think it fulfills its biological functions for survival. And
Right.
then when you get to our level of consciousness, human beings, where we have 9 to 5s, we live in a house where rain doesn't even hit our head outside because we're just sheltered, and our like survival instincts are suppressed because we really don't ever feel them triggered. We just live very comfortable lives in modern society. um anyway, where I was going with that is when you get to our level of consciousness, we're kind of like past that nature level, and we're kind of just like trying to get the things we want and that we desire. It's totally different than the plant and animal kingdom. I think if anything, we're the evil ones,
Well, I mean,
not nature.
you look at humans who are living in tribal communities that are having a very minimal footprint on the world, and we look
And
at
they
them
work
as if
together.
they're the ones that aren't advanced and
Yeah.
civilized when we pollute the oceans and we invade other countries. And yeah, I think maybe what you're getting at here is the abundance of comfort and the removal of like this kind of need to actually survive in an environment. Although there is obviously benefits to be drawn from creating comforts, if there's too much of that, then it's almost like the human begins to explore its options of what else it can start doing, and that's when things get quite
Yeah, it's
chaotic.
just
And
gratification. Like, for
yeah,
example,
yeah,
even in the scenario, if there was like an evil dictator, well, I'm pretty sure it's gratifying to achieve that level of power. Whereas somebody might be truly gratified going to the Vegas casinos and gambling their life savings on the slots. Like, gratification is different for everybody, but we're kind of like at a level right now of consciousness evolution where everyone's just seeking gratification. Everyone's just
yeah.
seeking, it's like all the American dream, how we talk about it here in America. Like, everybody wants that house and that fence. That's great. There's nothing wrong with wanting that. But what I'm just kind of getting at is I don't think nature is evil.
No.
I think that we are at a point of development where we have forgotten like the true meaning of nature and why we're really here. And that's about spiritual development. I'm not saying go be a monk and live in the woods, but you know,
Well, that's why I'm excited about things like psychedelic research kind of coming back to the forefront, and also just the types of studies that are being done into things like the fungal mycelial network, and
mm-hmm,
realizing, oh, hang on a
mm-hmm,
second, there seems to be some sort of intrinsic internet of information exchange going through the planet that's mirroring in form and function the human brain, in the same way that the human brain's passing information and nutritional information through its system. These things are connecting the plants together, they're communicating with each other through it. And it's like, oh, is that a brain? Is that the brain of the planet? Is that the neural makeup of the planet? And
mm-hmm.
why is it that this neural makeup can focalize into these kind of bodies and fruit up and become what we call mushrooms? And some of them,
You
when you
eat a
eat them,
piece of it and then it does that to your brain.
what's going on there, guys? Like, I mean, come
Yeah.
on, it seems pretty evident to me that when you look at the fact that the human brain is basically very similar, it's almost like we're just a little condensed version of the planet's mind. It's like the planet has created these little
We're
nodes with
we're
a
we're like a
little.
crystallized version
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
planet's
We're
mind.
we're
Yeah.
like a vehicle for the nature of this planet to explore its surroundings and its environment in a way that generates self-awareness. And you've got this kind of copy of the planetary mind created in this little structure that we've got inside our heads.
Mm-hmm.
And exactly as you said, because they've discovered that psilocybin cubensis can cause neural genesis or neural avalanching. This whole idea that if you've got blockages in your neural pathway and your communicatory pathways, which happens to all of us through trauma and suppression of bad memories, and all sorts of things create behavioral cycles, and these pathways get blocked or misused or damaged. These things repair it. They repair that neural structure. So we are so symbiotic with the nature of this planet. I mean, we've fallen out of balance with it, but even still, we still rely on the fruits and
Right.
the minerals, and everything comes from this planet, and we're in a constant correlationship with it. But we've drifted far away from. I think the difference is we're still in a co-relationship with it because we depend upon what it produces, but we've severed our empathetic spiritual appreciation of it. It's now just, oh yeah, it's an apple, an orange, it's wrapped in plastic, I don't give a shit, I'm
Yeah.
gonna throw this plastic into a park and let it
Mm-hmm.
just rot into the ground. Like, you know, we're still completely dependent and symbiotic on the planet. We just don't give a shit about it anymore.
Right.
You know?
That's a great way to summarize what I was trying to say. Is like we've forgotten the true meaning behind empathy itself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like it's like if we just all had empathy, that's a very kind of like reductionist way to say it that I think makes a lot of sense. If we just were to reconnect with empathy and realize that all life around us is no better or worse than us, but we're all equal, we would achieve unity. You know, I think that's what it's about.
Well, this is where I think that, you know, we were definitely better off when we were psychedelic tribes, because we genuinely had this connection. And you know, I'm not just pushing psychedelics as the answer, but it's as Terence McKenna would say,
I think it's an answer.
It's an answer.
I don't think there is the answer. I think
No.
it's a great answer. You know,
Exactly.
There's many answers.
To me, it's a very useful tool. It's a democratic tool because everyone technically could meditate, but most people don't want to, and a lot of people don't even understand it. And some people's minds are just built very differently, and they really struggle to get into those states. And so I get a little bit frustrated when people say, oh no, you should just meditate, like psychedelics aren't the answer. It's like, no, psychedelics are a really good tool for someone who would never consider meditation, and they have a strong experience, and then from there they may incorporate meditation into their life. And I know people who have been very analytically minded, who have had a strong psychedelic experience and have come out of that with a spiritual perspective and a completely different outlook, and have then incorporated these methodologies of like meditation and mindfulness practices into their lives. So I think that psychedelic research coming up into the forefront now is a very interesting thing. It's almost like it's one of those little symptoms of the way the planet is reacting right now. It's like, okay, look, here's a little beacon of hope coming up, maybe focus on this. Because, you know, I think that at the end of the day, like you were saying, it's empathy, it's consciousness. These are the things that we need to be capitalizing on more than anything. And I think it doesn't matter what form it comes in. If it's a psychedelic and it expands consciousness, do it. If it's just a practice and it expands consciousness, do it. If it's a technology and it expands consciousness, do it. Like, I just think that whatever expands empathy and consciousness, that is what we need to focus on. Doesn't matter what medium it comes through. You know, that because we are in trouble. And I think that like we've said, and we both feel that this is coming towards a conclusion that is actually optimistic in the end, but we have to lay that groundwork for it to come through. And so I think we have to highlight the fact that right now we have a problem, everyone. Like, we really need to be more empathetic. We really need to be more connected with each other. And social media is anti-social media. It's so divisive. It's so unbelievably toxic online. And I think that people need to be careful of that. I tweeted today, I'm taking a break, in bracket, like I'm taking a break and I'm not going back on for a while, because I just find that it changes my personality. And I find it very strange, actually, because I've never had something, and I know I've drifted off into a bit of a tangent here, but I just find that it's a weird little thread. Like, I've never experienced anything so divisive but so subtly manipulative as social media, where I have to catch myself and go, holy shit, I'm not being me. I'm being really I'm getting really aggressive and angry and frustrated, and all these opinions are coming at me, and I'm going, no, you're wrong. And it's like, that's not me. I'm not like that. I really like to have conversations and dialogue, and it's something about, like, specifically Twitter, where it just creates this division, and I just can't take it anymore.
Yeah. And the sad thing, truly, well, it's a good and a bad thing, you know, but it's just crazy that the majority of news now is transmitted through social media.
Right.
And it's like, what's real and what's fake, you know?
You're just bombarded constantly
bombarded with information. It's pure overstimulation. And I think that's by design. And I don't think it's all bad. You know, social media has its uses.
Of course.
But yeah, definitely playing with fire there. I barely interact on social media anymore. Just make my posts about my show, try to just like spread some positivity and just walk away.
Yeah. That's where it's got to be. I want to bring it back to the lady real quick, because there's something I wanted to bring up. Someone had asked me about this, and they told me that you believe there might be. Now, I know that you think there might be a connection between the lady and the god Hathor, but also about cattle mutilations, that you feel that there's a connection between the lady Hathor and cattle mutilations. Is that right?
No, I've never said that.
Oh, okay. Someone said that. I think it was something along
Someone
the lines of,
probably trolling you.
oh, no
No,
way.
yeah,
Screw
yeah.
no.
I've never
Well,
said that.
I think it was something along the lines of because of like the kind of the bovine relationship with the whole god of Hathor and the lady, and this whole idea of there being this bull, and then maybe the cattle mutilations was something basically mocking or making a mockery, or like some sort of ritual mockery of the god Hathor by,
That's a very cool theory, but
yeah.
I didn't come up with it.
Okay, all right. There was, I
Yeah,
think it was
yeah.
one of, I think it was one of my Patreons, so I don't think they were trolling.
Very
I
cool
think that,
theory, though. I really liked that take. At first, I thought you were saying like they were saying that the lady was mutilating cows, and I was like,
oh,
no.
no.
But I could see how they would be doing that. How if there were these black ops like CIA type programs or whatever, doing this to try to put out, if cattle mutilation is even real. I don't know. I'm not going to say it's not real. That would be really dumb. I haven't, I don't know. But
Well,
if it's even real, sure, I could see why they would do that.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, like, because like Stephen Greer, you got to take with a pinch of salt. But one
Yeah.
of the things that he said is that that there are these paramilitary groups that go out and they commit cattle mutilations, and it just makes me think. You're talking about how there is this really dark counter group to the Aquarian Enlightenment narrative that is trying to push against that. And it's like,
Right.
well, maybe they would make a mockery of the god that seems to represent the age of Aquarius and the shift over, and they'd be like, butchering cattle. But it seems like a bit of a, I don't know. I mean, ceremonies are ceremonies, right? These rituals get weird,
Yeah.
and I don't want to say that it's not possible, because people do some crazy stuff in ritual
Right.
behavior.
Yeah. Like I'm not going to say that's not possible, but
Yeah.
I certainly didn't originate that theory. Very cool. To answer the other part of their question, she actually told my father her name was Hathor, like the Egyptian
She said
entity.
that.
She said that. She said her name was Hathor. She said the hidden one is Amun Ra. Yeah. That's why I say that. Yeah.
The hidden one is Amun Ra. Is that like an ominous statement? Like that's a bad, like, is that a bad thing?
No. That's like, if you could conceive what God is, it would be like how they depicted Amun Ra,
right.
Like the visible and invisible light that all reality itself and life and creation comes from. Duality, all of it. Actually, the ancient mystery version of Amun Ra. So people misunderstand what the Egyptian deities truly were. They were not like animal-headed beings. That's how it was depicted in hieroglyphs, so that we could understand the elements of nature that they corresponded with. They were actually forces of nature. They were known as the Neter or the Neteru. And Amun Ra was like the Neter.
The Neter.
Like Neter. Neteru would be like the plural version of that, like right. The Neteru. That's what they were called in ancient times. And they were understood as the actual forces of nature itself. They didn't actually worship like anthropomorphic figures walking around with like these buff chiseled chests with like a bird head. That's an artistic icon.
Oh man,
right? Yeah, that it'd be a cool movie, but
it would be a cool movie.
Back in those days, they had this symbolic language, because a picture says 1,000 words, right? And it's the common vernacular at the time. They just all understood that was intrinsically implied. And anyway, so the ancient understanding of Amun Ra is basically consciousness. It's like there's the physical sun that animates all life, which is true scientifically. Like even like Carl Sagan popularized this. You're made of star stuff. The elements in your body only can exist because of the conditions presented by the heat of the sun, right? So you, in a way, if you wanted to be like metaphorical, you're kind of like the child of the sun. Right. And also, like, if you want to be even more following that train of thought, you're kind of like the child of the earth and the sun, right? That's how they understood it back then. And they had these multiple layers of subterfuge behind their mystery systems. Sure, yeah, the sun is our father. Well, when you break it down from the spiritual scientific understanding, that's actually true. And anyway, so they had the concept that there is a sun, a celestial entity that all life manifests from on the physical plane, but also in the spiritual plane, life is manifesting from the star Sirius. There's like this invisible realm, and that's represented as Amun, the invisible, and Ra, the visible. It's just consciousness. It's just, that's it.
One other thing as well, with Hathor, because it seems to have like negative connotations. Is that right? Like there seems to be like negative connotations around like these types of gods within. I mean, I think people just see it as the occult, right? They just see it as the occult.
They
But
see it that way. Yeah.
it's just an interpretation of, because like Hathor is of itself, I guess, just an interpretation. I mean, you're saying the lady says its name is Hathor, but is that even a, is that just a human concept?
Here's what I think about that. So I really do think there was an Atlantean period where, like, I think that the Earth and the human race goes through multiple cycles, probably about 26,000 year cycles, and then we get wiped out, and then there's another one. I think that just life is constantly evolving, just like the Hindus called it samsara, right? Like the wheel of reincarnation, or they called them the yugas, the 4 ages of life in the universe. And at the end of the age, it's kind of like redone, people evolve, whatever, and then boom, there's another cycle. They start back at ground zero. Possible, I don't know, but I believe that the pyramids and the Egyptian kind of like mystical artifacts and landmarks and things like that are put there to contain imagery and metaphor that can stand the test of time throughout these cycles. That can be there forever. So like if you think of the oldest iconography of the divine or the deity, Egyptian is one of, if not the oldest, and then also including like Babylon and Hindu. And I think if you were to just like get a piece of paper and you were to write down all of the religions around the world, right? Like, and all of their symbols and what they mean, and just kind of like compare this list, and you were to look at the oldest ones, I think the older and farther back you go, particularly like to like Egypt, I think the last people probably had that model too. Maybe they put it there. They don't know how old the pyramids are. As a matter of fact, there's evidence on the top of them that they had withstood extreme heat scorching from severe, like catastrophic level heat flashes of the sun that probably would have devastated all life on Earth, and yet they're still there, And anyway, so yeah, I think these stories are put in these pyramids and they're contained there forever, so that every cycle can have access to them and kind of like figure out what they are and what they mean. So if I was an entity, if I was an actual entity that existed in a realm that was, far more, infinitely more advanced than the physical realm, and I was going to go talk to some little dummy, and I'm not saying my dad's a dummy, but I'm just saying, like, from a spiritual being, this person's a dummy. I got to make it real simple, right? I got to make sure he understands what the hell I'm talking about. I would probably give an Egyptian name too, because it's so old. It's so ancient. It's been there, it's not going away. Like that symbol has been there. Yeah. Jesus, for example, I probably wouldn't give that name. It's only been around 2,000 years, or I wouldn't give the name like Buddha. I wouldn't give that. I don't know. It just makes sense to me. The more I think about it and the more I think, like, why do they give these Egyptian names? I think maybe there's something to them. They've been there a very long time.
I can't wait to go to Egypt, man.
Yeah, it'd be cool. It'd be really cool.
Yeah, I'm going out there in May.
Oh, nice, cool. Are you gonna go see like Giza and the pyramids and stuff?
Doing the whole thing. I'm doing 13 days, and we're going from Cairo to Luxor to Aswan, visiting the Giza pyramids. Yeah, it was one of my friends in within the research community, because it's kind of like an esoteric group. So have you ever heard of the guy Johnny Enoch?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, he's one of those guys on Gaia. Like I think he does like presentations on like ancient Egypt and all that kind of stuff. So it's like a very esoteric based tour, and it's all kind of been pre-organized. So we're being taken out to all these different places. Yeah, but it's like really focused on the Hermetic principles, the idea of perhaps ancient technologies. It's a very non-mainstream tour. Which is exactly what I wanted. So yeah, it was meant to be March, but they've delayed it because of like COVID at the time, and it's been pushed back. Right. So going in May. But yeah, dude, like it's the first time I've ever been to Egypt. Experience of a lifetime, and I'm going to be documenting that for sure.
Oh yeah, that's incredible. That's really cool.
Yeah,
it's crazy. Like when you dive deeper into Egypt, which I'm sure you have, but for the listeners' sake. There are layers of subterfuge to the Egyptian systems too. Like they had a very in-depth understanding of psychology and how it mixes with the spirit. They had a whole magical system that was based on words you speak. And people understand that as like, oh, you speak a word and then just like reality changes. It's like Harry Potter. It's like magic. But no, the way they understood it was you speak certain words that carry these vibrations that have been around for a long, long time, we've really forgotten what words are, and how amazing it is that we have the ability to, on a subconscious level, compute these geometric symbols in our brain known as letters and words, spell them out, and then we summon the breath from our lungs.
Spell them out.
Spell them out. Yeah, that was intentional. And then we summon the breath from our lungs, flap our tongue around our roof of our mouth and our teeth in a certain way that arranges the vibrations in the air around us, shoot it at you, and you catch that wave and you understand the geometric symbols that I was thinking of too.
Right.
And by the way, those geometric symbols contain deep metaphorical meanings, right? So we really don't know what words are. And there's actually a concept of the twilight language. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. It's like the idea that there was an ancient language long ago before the Tower of Babel, like the true language, like, like what the gods would communicate with, even though I don't, necessarily believe there's gods like that. I think it's consciousness and entities manifest from that. But anyway, so it's the belief that there are certain words that we've forgotten as a species that might contain really powerful vibrations, and that when spoken in a certain rhythmic cadence could alter your own subconscious mind. So you could just kind of like hack your brain a little bit and believe like, I really want this raise. Well, maybe I really want the raise because, at a job, because the problem is, or like take a step back, like I really want this raise or whatever, I want to achieve this thing, but I'm holding myself back from these like limiting negative self-beliefs. What if there were ways we could like change our subconscious mind to like clear those negative belief systems out? And the Egyptians had a whole system for that called Heka, speaking certain words to alter your subconscious mind and kind of like therefore affect reality through your beliefs, your subconscious beliefs. Very advanced spiritual system.
I think it makes a degree of sense. At least to me, it makes sense, and I guess because I draw upon how I feel certain things have been manifested into my life based on my output, my emotional output, and my beliefs. That's why I think this whole idea of contacting the phenomenon is very difficult, because I do think everyone can do it, but I don't think everyone can do it, if that makes sense.
It does.
Because if you don't have that belief, I was very lucky in a sense, although I guess you could also say guided. I kind of not quite sure, but certainly lucky in the sense that I got introduced into the idea that consciousness could contact the phenomenon off of the back of a research journey through consciousness that ended with me basically sitting on my bed and saying out loud to the universe, I have literally no idea why I'm bothering to even learn these things, because none of it seems to apply to my real life, and I need evidence of this applying to my real life. How can I take these concepts that I've been absorbing, and how can I apply it, do something real that is evidence of this actually existing? And then within a few weeks, I was introduced to this idea of contacting the phenomenon, and so for me, it was like an answer to a prayer, So I have to acknowledge that not everyone's had that type of journey. I was just very fortunate that the way in which it happened for me, it meant that when I was out there in that garden, I had no doubt. I had literally no doubt. I was like, literally, I asked for something and it's been given to me. So gonna get into that state, gonna project my thoughts. I know something's gonna happen, and it happened. So like, I think that there's that foundational level, which is frustrating, of belief, faith, we have to call it that, I guess, to a certain extent. I think that there are certain ways to explain it scientifically, loosely, around quantum mechanics and consciousness, and we have rough models, but really there is this underlying, especially if you're actually trying to have an experience with something else, that you're not going to have it if you don't believe it's possible.
Yeah. What's crazy about that, Jay, is the night in 2007, when my dad had his first experience, he actually, at the time he was a fundamental believing Christian. He didn't think about UFOs. He was a businessman, lost his business. He didn't think about this. And he just said a prayer. He said, God, either heal me or just like kill me, take my life away. I'm at the end of my rope here, and I can't go on unless you help me change it. And then he had his experiences. So
wow.
It was like literally a prayer was answered. And I don't want people to think that what I'm trying to say is just go pray, like how we're taught in church. I think that fundamentally as a species, we've forgotten what that really is. It's kind of been like turned into this iconography of like, you send a request and then God answers and boom, bingo, you don't got to do anything, you just pray. But in reality, I think through your consciousness, you can interface with these beings through intention, through belief, through, sometimes if you speak things, the vibrations may be a little stronger. So yeah, to a degree, I do believe in prayer, but I wouldn't say I pray every night, like, forgive me for my sin. Like, that's not, I don't think that's helpful.
I'm the same though. I mean, like, because I'm not Christian. I don't have that type of belief structure. I use the word pray because it's the only word I can really use, other than, I guess, like manifest. But it's more like, just kind of speaking my thoughts out loud to something that I genuinely believe can listen. But to me, it's an interesting thing, like the idea of like, do prayers get answered? I think that it's this strange thing of it requires action from you. Like, it's word, it's thought, it's word, it's deed. It's that whole thing of like, you can ask for something, then things might come up in your life. It's your responsibility to interpret those things and move into a situation that kind of aligns with what you've been asking for. And I do think that when you ask for something, situations can be presented to you that would allow you to filter into getting what you wanted, but it doesn't just arrive at your feet. You can't just sit on your bed and ask for £1 million and eventually suddenly arrive in the check. But you might, if you want,
that would be black magic.
Right, that would be black magic. But if you hold that intention in your mind, and then you pay attention to how you live your life, and you kind of interact in a way that feels like it's in alignment with that goal, that's, I think, how you manifest that stuff. But it doesn't happen without you moving. It doesn't happen without you actually experiencing life and moving with life. And I think that's where people get hung up. It's like, well, I've asked for loads of things and it's never happened. It's like, but it's not necessarily,
you didn't do anything.
Exactly, you didn't do anything, and you have to actually act. And that can be difficult because life is cryptic, man. And like, symbols and signs and little reminders can come up, and they can be very cryptic. And I think it depends sometimes on the kind of person you are. If you're a very analytical person and you don't have a lot of I guess kind of like intuitive intelligence, you might not recognize a lot of the signs because there isn't that resonance of like, oh, I feel that, I feel what that means to me. But if you do have that intuitive intelligence, I think that you're more able to pick up on subtle signs in life. I find that's the case a lot of the time. But it's an interesting thing, man. The whole idea of praying and manifestation and I just think that, at least from my own perspective, if I look back on what's happened to me in my own life, I have to recognize that there are examples of that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, it's like, your body, your biological system is like a microcosm of this large sprawling universe. I mean, if you scale all the way up and all the way down, and I'm talking like in your imagination, you couldn't do this with a machine, it'd be impossible. But if you just imagine in your mind, like, what's the biggest you can conceive of the universe, right? Like galaxies and galaxies and galaxies and black holes and whatever. Or if you go the other way, and you take your mind and just imagine, what's the smallest thing? Is it an atom? Is it, now we've figured out it's smaller than an atom? It's subatomic atoms and quarks and things like that. And if you look at all those different examples on the spectrum of life, very big and very small, you'll realize that it's all a system at every level of reality that works together, that needs each other to harmonically exist. Like, even the galaxy is made up of all the solar systems and all the planets. Everything that's even nameable or observable in the universe is part of a system. And anyway, so that would be kind of like the understanding of the Egyptian concept, as above, so below. Like, reality is an ever expanding fractal spiral. Like, at every level, it mirrors the higher and the lower levels. And so anyway, so your body is no different. It's a microcosmic universe. And in some way, when you attune yourself, your spirit, your mind, and your body to that macrocosmic, larger understanding of like consciousness, and that there is infinite life out there and intelligence behind that, in some way, it's going to respond to your little microcosmic existence, and it's going to subtly rearrange things in your life so that you can achieve the things that you need, right? But people don't really understand. You can't just like wish for something and then you get it. That's not how it works. That would be like black magic. I mean, people need to understand that you should ask for what you need, not the things you want. What do you need? Do you
And
really need £1,000,000? No.
that's what you usually get as well. You get what
What
you
you need
need, and you
and
might
what you
not
can handle.
necessarily know what you need. You know what? I'll
Yep.
give you an example, and it's a personal example, but why not? Like, it's been a pretty difficult time for me recently because I live in I live in a little, well, city, but on the outskirts of a city called Nottingham. I've lived here for a few years, and I moved here because of my best mate, my best friend, and we've been like best friends for like 9 years. And I moved here pretty much to be close to him because we were starting up this like clothing company at the time, and
Oh,
it's been a
cool.
whole thing. But recently, like we had like a series of arguments about stuff, and we're like not talking, and we haven't been
Mm.
talking for quite some time, and it's like a first time this has happened. And it's been a very difficult situation for me to kind of process, and I've gone through a lot of emotions, and it's been a really difficult time, to be honest. But like, I've been recognizing that for a long time, to be like, for quite a few months, I've been thinking, I need to do this, I need to do this, or that, or I really need to kick this into gear, and I'm just sitting here and I'm not doing it, and then I distract myself by kind of going and seeing my friend all the time, and it just got to a point where I think it was more about distracting myself from like doing things that I needed to be doing, and so this situation's occurred now, and God bless him, I love him, and I know he loves me, but we both have had to just kind of like split apart from each other. And it's been this really weird situation of like recognizing, oh wow, yeah, I asked for this, I needed this is actually the thing that, because over the
Yeah.
past few months I've been kind of doing things I need to do and kicking myself into gear, and being proactive in those things that I wasn't doing before. And it made me realize, like, oh yeah, that's what's happening now. And so I wanted to be honest about it, because I want people to realize that, like, those types of situations where it's really tough and it's really emotionally turbulent, those are
Yeah.
actually the most important situations to
It's like
focus on.
training grounds.
It's the training grounds, and you've got to
Yeah.
find that positivity within it and go, look, these are
Hmm.
the reasons why this kind of thing is happening. And I think too many people struggle to do that, and so they blame everything around them, and they don't understand why something's happening. And you've got to self-reflect, you've got to look back, and you've got to realize that these are the ways in which you're growing and developing and strengthening as a human being, is you have to go through these kind of ups and downs in life, and you've got to recognize them when they come. So yeah, it's like with this situation, I'm trying to take the positive from it as much as I can by focusing on myself, and then through doing that, realizing that this situation was the catalyst for me to focus on myself. And it's like, okay, so there's some good positives there, but it's bitter with the sweet. That's life. That's life.
Yeah. Yeah. The way I like to relate that is like a very literal example. I tell people this all the time. And it's like, you join the army or you join the military, right? And you're training to become a soldier. Forget about the killing part. Like, obviously, I don't want people to go kill people, but just you're training to become a soldier or like a police officer or a fireman or something. A very tough, rigorous career. What do? They put your ass in boot camp, and they make you do thousands of push-ups throughout
Mm.
this many weeks, and running dozens of miles, and just like put you through this grueling physical hell. But by the time you come out on the other side of it, you're a soldier now. You're very strong. You're very capable. You trained for this. You're ready for this now because you were put through the fire, so to speak. And that lead you kind of recruit earlier, and now you've come out on the other side, and you're like gold. And that's sort of like the same with the emotional and the spiritual. Like, when you go through these really tough times, it's like boot camp for the soul.
Yeah.
You're like being refined. You're going to come out on the other side stronger if you understand that.
That's the thing, is
Yeah.
understanding it. And that's that,
Yep.
it's like, for me, that's come with time. And my God, have I, am I at the point where I fully understand? No, no, I don't think
Right.
any real humans can fully be like, oh yeah, I understand every little vibe in my life. It all just, I
Yeah.
flow
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
it completely. It's like, no, like, problems happen, and you think of them as problems. But the more that you can recognize the good within that, it's so important. And I think that the more you do that, it prepares you for, unfortunately, the next inevitable one, because that is life. It's this up and down. So you've got to kind of get yourself
Mm-hmm.
strengthened, and then the next time something happens, you can move through it with less turbulence, less emotional turbulence than you would have perhaps 3-4 years ago, when you didn't have the same kind of kind of blueprint. But if you build from those experiences, if you learn from those experiences, then it definitely makes things a little bit easier as things go on. Something I wanted to ask you about though, man, just kind of like detracting away from that, and how are we doing? Because I've still got the listener questions to ask. Are you good to kind of keep going for a bit?
Yeah. Do you mind if we like take a quick cut and I use the restroom?
Dude, totally. Let's do that now. Let's do that now.
Good to go.
All right, we're good to go. Yeah. So for anyone who's just noticed the jump cut, we just had a quick toilet break, and we're gonna plug on. We've still got a few more questions for you, and then we'll jump into some of the Patreon and community questions. How do you feel about secret societies? Do you think there are genuinely good secret societies with pure intentions? Do you think that they're all bad, or is there a place for them?
I don't think they're all bad. I think it's complicated. Like on the one hand, I do not appreciate how like secrets are held from the world, but that's coming from someone who has grown up in a life of secrecy and is desperate to tell it to as many as possible, as many people as possible. I do think that I understand on some fundamental level that there can be a need for secrecy for some of the things that are contained by these secret societies. Like, I don't think that they're all bad. I do think there are good ones. I really like, so far, I have not dove all the way into the Rosicrucians, but so far I really like what I've read about them. Freemasons are probably the most complicated one out there, because like on the one hand, people think that they're just like, the Illuminati, they're like running the world. And like, sure, there's been like 14 US presidents that were 33-degree Freemasons. And, like it's speculated like Walt Disney and major entertainers. And like, on the other hand, it's like, I don't necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like if I was a powerful dude, I would probably join a powerful secret society as well and get a leg up. But yeah, I mean, I think secret societies are really cool. I've spent the last 10 years studying them, and there are some bad ones like the OTO, the Ordo Templi Orientis. They have some very disgusting ritual initiations in some of their degrees, very nasty stuff, like things I wouldn't even want to say on your show. And then there are other ones like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and really all they do is they're just trying to figure out how to like use higher levels of consciousness to manifest things in reality. Like I don't think that they're all evil. I think that there is an extreme stigma because of the veil of secrecy.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It's the exclusivity, it's the veil of secrecy around it. And I think it was in the Hermetic teachings, where it was like meat for the men, milk for the babes, or something like that. That was the whole idea of, that there are certain concepts that the vast majority just don't need to understand, and we're going to have our group where we can kind of subtly influence humanity through these societies. And I think that there is obviously positive and negative connotations, because it depends on the agenda of those societies. Although, speaking from just knowing one high-level Freemason and Rosicrucian, my good friend John Majorowski, he is a beautiful human being. So
yeah, very
I'm
nice.
Sure there are lots of good people within these groups as well.
I do know that at the highest levels of ufology, Freemasons are involved. I know that for a fact, and as well as Mormons. Believe it or not. I mean, Mormons, if we're just going to call it what it is, Mormonism is basically like a very large mainstream secret society. And actually, they use Freemasonic practices. That's not very commonly known, but Freemasonry has kind of like been embedded into the heart of Mormonism.
Senator Harry Reid was a Mormon, wasn't he? I'm pretty sure Senator Reid was a Mormon. And
I didn't know that.
Brandon Fugel, obviously from Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh, I didn't know that. And also there's a guy named, I can't remember his name, Joe Firmage, a big player in ufology, kind of like behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And, for anybody who hears that, like, the meat for the men and the milk for the babes or whatever.
For the babes, something like that. Yeah.
Well, even Jesus had a secret society with his disciples. I mean, he didn't explicitly say, I have a secret society, but what he said was, you never cast pearls before swine. That doesn't mean you don't throw, little stones at a pig. What he was saying was a metaphor for you take these deep, esoteric, philosophical truths and you don't throw them to the profane who won't understand them, and they'll, hate you for it.
Well, if social media has taught me anything, that's bloody true.
Yeah. And then the other thing he said, he very explicitly says in one of the scriptures, again, I like a student of the esoteric doesn't neglect the Bible. It is in itself an esoteric.
It's a part of
right.
The whole thing.
It's an esoteric document, and Freemasons teach a lot about Jesus, as well as Rosicrucians. They teach it from like the esoteric and the Gnostic angle. Yeah. But one of the things that Jesus actually historically said, if these documents are even true, in the New Testament, was that he divulges his true secrets to his disciples, and then when he goes and speaks in the public, he uses metaphor. I think it was the Apostle Peter. He said, why do you speak in metaphor? He said, well, something to, I can't quote it verbatim, I'm not a pastor, for God's sake, but he said something to the effect of like, the metaphor is for the masters, the masses, and to my disciples who truly are worthy is who I'll tell the secrets. So yeah, I just think that that's a function of reality. Like, there are these secrets that not everybody are ready for, but I think that we are now, because we're entering the age of Aquarius. I think that a lot of things are going to come out, and they are. They already are.
What are some of the weirdest or maybe even disturbing encounters you or your family have had with the intelligence community?
Disturbing. There was an individual who put death threats on our family. Weird. I would say weird would be probably Tim Taylor, who's, like, I'm pretty sure most people know who that is. And I say weird because some of the things that he presented, like, like he handed me these 2 pieces of exotic metal. He called them off planet. And when I held them in my hand, they sent electricity through my body. And he told us all kinds of things like time travel and like mind reading, and that they have all these technologies and things like that. And he told us all kinds of crap. Like, we're constantly being remote viewed. We constantly have a spy satellite over our house watching us at all times. Like, he's told us a lot of things like that. Do I believe it? No. I think if I was in the Department of Defense and there was this family in North Carolina who's just really good Southern people who believe in just like sharing with their community and have that good old Southern hospitality. I mean, we literally let everybody in the door, even the death threat people, even the weirdos. We just let them come in and hear them out. And if I was in the Department of Defense, I would probably want to scare the hell out of that family too, so they're scared to go speak. It apparently didn't work on me, but...
Yeah, well, this is something, right? Do you think that these are rogue elements operating kind of outside of their respective agencies' authority? Because it would seem to me that like domestic operations of intimidation on American citizens would be considered like highly illegal.
I mean, you would think so, but does the CIA really answer to anybody? I mean, have they ever? Didn't they kill JFK when he started saying he was going to tear them apart?
So these, like the ones that were actually threatening, they actually said they were from the CIA.
Let me clarify. The guy that came to our property was sent on behalf of an currently active and Googleable, researchable member of the CIA and the DIA. And I'm just not talking a pipsqueak. I'm talking a pretty higher rank individual who has been involved with like briefing presidents and
can you name them or?
No, I'm not comfortable doing that. I'm not comfortable like picking fights with people. That's just not my personality.
Yeah. Okay. Out of the people that we know of in the research community, who do you think has the most information or the most knowledge about the phenomenon?
My dad. I honestly believe that. My dad. And that was told to me by Jim Simivan and Tim Taylor told my dad. They all have told him, and some other people from I'm not supposed to say their names, some undisclosed things, but from an agency connected to the CIA that is also well known, but I just don't want to disclose who they are at this moment. And they all unanimously agree that like your dad's the guy. He might talking to me. Your dad's the guy. You should listen to your dad. Like the way that what was told to me is particularly by Jim Simivan. The way that your dad understands this phenomenon and the way that it's put in his head and the way that these entities communicate with him is given to him in that way so that he can tell the world with clarity, with real, genuine truth. Like the way that it's coming to him is the way that it is. They know that in the intelligence agencies. They believe it. There's a lot of people out there that say they have these experiences. And it's like, man, I talked to a lady who said that she's taken underground every Friday by the CIA, molested, and then passed around to the reptilians and they molest her. And I'm like, are you serious? No, I don't believe that at all. You know, like there's a lot of crap out there.
Well, this is
But
what I was saying before about the fact that within this, specifically within this type of research community, it's an open floodgate to every
yeah,
paranoid, delusional person that exists on planet Earth. And obviously, within that,
yep,
there are these gems of real, but you have to sift through a lot of crap to kind of find
yeah,
that. And I think that's what puts a lot of people off, is it's just on the surface level, there's just so much madness. I mean, I find it stressful, and I'm an experiencer, and I believe in the phenomenon, and I believe in, a lot of people's experiences. But even I sit there sometimes just like, I can't deal with these emails I'm getting from some people, like, have me
yeah.
on your show, I've done this, that, and the other. And it's like, I just, yeah, there's a lot of it. There is a lot of it. You know,
When my
it's
dad was at Cape Canaveral, but sorry to cut you off, but when my dad was at Cape Canaveral with Tim Taylor, he took my dad through. He took him into mission control, into the room where like the astronauts get ready. This is not a place where civilians can just go.
yeah, I've
And
seen the
I
photos of that.
Yeah, and I personally, it's the crazy thing. People look at those photos and they're like, they're fake. Anybody can go there. Sure. Anyway, I suspect that they do this as kind of like a wine and dine thing. Like, hey, we're gonna buddy up to you, so you're just kind of like chipper and just think we have your back. And maybe they really do. I don't know. Hasn't been indicated to me in a way that I believe yet. At least, some individuals. Some of them in the CIA have actually truly been incredibly kind to us. I'm not, disparaging everybody I've ever met. But anyway, so one of the things my dad asked them is like, why do you guys come talk to me? I'm just living my simple life, having these experiences. Why do you guys need to come to me and ask me all these questions? And it was either Tim Taylor at that instance, or it was Jim, I can't remember, told him, we come to you because the phenomenon does not interact with us and the government. They understand our intentions. They don't cooperate with us. We know they cooperate with you. We know the lady's real. We know these beings are real. We want to know why they cooperate with you, what they're telling you, and what they want. And Tim actually made my dad write down a number of things that he experienced, like, some of his prophecies, some of the other encounters. It actually took him to the Pentagon and briefed Pentagon, I guess, employees or whatever on them. And yeah, I mean, I think if I was to pick a person who knew a lot of the phenomenon, I would definitely say Jim Semivan. He knows his stuff based on the conversations we've had. He very much personally and privately indicated to me that he understands that this is an interdimensional, ultra-terrestrial, whatever you want to call it, phenomenon that created us, communicates to us through occult symbols, and that they exist on a level of manifestation that is far beyond our physical form. So I don't know. I mean, I would say Jim is a heavy hitter. But, they don't just come up and they don't just say, I know more than this guy. It's kind of hard to answer that question,
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's weird, isn't it? I mean, you got these guys and they're saying this, and then the way it's being rolled out within the public arena, congressional arena, is just not even close to the reality of the situation. I mean, you've had Lou Elizondo recently being a lot more consciousness orientated in.
That's a good one too, by the way.
Interviews.
He really knows his stuff.
Yeah. Well, he's certainly started to speak a lot more about the consciousness side of it within interviews, which I think is quite interesting. It's a bit of a progression in the way that it's being addressed. But yeah, we're a long way away from talking about ultra-terrestrial creators and hyperdimensional objects and occult symbolism on CNN or Fox News. That's a long way away. So I don't really know what the game plan is to address the nature of the phenomenon through that type of discussion. I just don't think it's going to happen that way.
Well, in private, these guys do talk about the occult. Like, for example, Tim Taylor had an Ouroboros on his shirt, and we're like, what is that? What does that even mean? And he explained that it's the cycle of eternal life. It's the cycle. Just like what I was talking about earlier, how like in Hinduism, they called it the yugas, the ages, and the Norse belief, it was the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its tail. And he explained like the triangle pointing up, pointing down. When you intersect them, it makes the six-pointed star. And, according to like sacred geometry and ancient occult, et cetera, esoteric knowledge, it's really just like the masculine and feminine forces of reality merging. I actually learned all that stuff from these guys, that particular information, and went and found out it was all legit. So yeah, they do talk about the occult in private and consciousness and things like that.
Yeah. How do you feel about like the Vatican when it comes to esoteric and phenomenon related secret keeping, especially, I mean, you know, you kind of take into consideration the secret archives, which I think contains like something like 53 miles worth of shelving
Yeah,
to
yeah.
contain all of the historically sequestered documents and parchments and other artifacts that the Roman Catholic Church has captured from all over the world. Like, what's your position on the Vatican?
I think the Vatican is one of those institutions that has mind controlled the world. If you really just want to get down to brass tacks, I
Let's get
mean,
down to brass tacks.
yeah, I think that the Vatican has not been good for humanity. I don't care what anybody says. You know, the Pope sits literally. Anybody can Google this if they think I'm just bullshitting. The Pope sits on a golden chair or whatever. I don't know what color his chair is, but he sits on a fancy ass chair. He's got a freaking staff, a golden staff that's actually the scepter of Dionysus, the Greek god. He wears a hat on his head, which, by the way, comes from the Babylonian fish deity Dagon. I mean, he dresses like this total like ancient occult priest, and then it's just crazy. It's paganism woven into Christianity. Do I think paganism is inherently evil? No. Do I think Christianity is inherently evil? No. But what I do think is that the Vatican has totally tricked the world into believing their corporate version of Jesus, where like you got to go to church, you got to pay your tithes, you got to confess your sins. And back in the like 15 and 1600s or whatever, they were charging people, your auntie and uncle, they're in purgatory. If you pay us X amount of, you know, gold coins or whatever, we'll get them out for you and we'll talk to God and try to get them to heaven. Like there's just a long history of the Vatican doing very heinous, evil things.
Yeah, one of the creepiest things about the Vatican is the well, there's a lot of things, but one of the creepiest visual things is a statue of Christ's resurrection that's situated behind the stage of I think it's Paul the Fourth's audience hall, and
Yeah.
you know, the hall itself is very strange because from the outside the building looks very similar to the head of a viper, and inside the building, if you stand at the back and look towards the stage, and I'll put images up in post so that people can see this.
Yeah. And I've seen it. Yeah. It's a serpent's head.
Yeah, the room looks like the head of a snake, and it's got two eyes on the sides, and the stage even looks like the jaw of a snake, and you've got two pillars shaped like fangs on either side, which to me is kind of subtle symbology of preaching through the jaws of a snake, which seems, at least from a Christian perspective, kind of satanic. And then behind the stage is a depiction of Jesus Christ that looks like it belongs on the front gate of Marilyn Manson's house. I mean,
he's like in hell. He's suffering in hell.
It's the most disturbing and sinister looking depiction of Jesus. And I think the artist has said that it's depicting Jesus rising up from a nuclear holocaust. So that's what the artist says that it's depicting. It's depicting a 21st century resurrection of Jesus coming up through a nuclear holocaust, and this goes back to this whole doomsday cult idea that, you know, was given to your dad by the lady. I think the Vatican's probably one of the chief runners of this doomsday cult.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think so too, if we're just being honest. And it's crazy because like just think about this. Just think about this. I love Jesus. I think Jesus was a real person. I think he was a sage. If you understand, I don't mean you, Jay, but just like the listener or whoever. I think if you understand that there are other texts about Jesus that have come out that tell a completely different story, that he was talking about like consciousness and reincarnation. And there's actual historical evidence that the earliest Christians were, in fact, walking around ancient Judea talking about reincarnation. As a matter of fact, it got so widespread that the Emperor Justinian, or Justinius, not sure how to spell his name, in about 545 AD, literally outlawed reincarnation from the Christian doctrine, because even the Pope at the time was heavy into teaching reincarnation. And anyway, so when you take into this account how Christianity itself was just totally mutilated and just slaughtered and conformed by the Holy Roman Vatican Empire, think about this. What if there really were a group of people back then? I mean, there were, but like, just what if these people really did witness this guy get tortured and murdered, Jesus Christ, and he resurrected, right? And then the Holy Roman Empire makes an icon of that, and everybody has to worship their slaughtered God on their shirt with Jesus bleeding and suffering on a cross. It's kind of like worshiping death. It's very morbid.
Yeah.
It's very evil. And by the way, you have to eat his flesh and drink his blood every Sunday. Eat the bread and drink the wine. You're just slurping on his blood out of his veins, and then you're going to eat his flesh real quick. It's a very, I don't know, that's very like black metal. It's very, I don't know.
Well, when you start to kind of break it down like that, it definitely starts to feel like, oh, that's That's a weird approach to your
Yeah,
Lord and
kind of.
Savior,
It's
and
like why not just wear an electric chair on a necklace? It's like capital
right?
punishment. I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe I'm being profane or whatever, but I believe Jesus was a very incredible individual who, according to the Gnostic texts, he traveled all around and he learned from like Egypt and India and Greece and
Yeah.
Persia, mastered their mysteries, and he came back and he started speaking about the higher God of light. And when you understand the truth that we're all just spiritual beings having a physical experience, when you understand that, you don't really need to reincarnate anymore.
Yeah.
You kind of won the game. You got to be you the esoteric meaning of Jesus. For anybody who thinks, damn, he really hates Jesus. No. I love Jesus. I think Jesus is a figure, real or not, it doesn't matter. The way that Jesus is depicted and portrayed, if you consciously right now decide to live your life from the principles and concepts that were attributed to Jesus, like loving other people, loving yourself, forgiveness, mercy, if you vibrate with those attitudes and attributes, you're gonna figure it out. You're gonna reach enlightenment. You're gonna reach happiness, joy, whatever. Yeah, I think the energy behind Jesus is very real. Do I believe the Vatican version? Hell no.
Yeah, yeah. Well, these it's the ascended masters, isn't it? I mean, it's
Yeah,
Buddha, it's Krishna, it's Jesus, it's Hermes Trismegistus, it's all of these individuals and
yeah.
names over time.
Buddha.
And it's I think we get in trouble when we kind of go, no, it's just this one person, they are the
Yep.
only person we should listen to. It's like, no, let's take all of these opinions, let's take all of this information from across the world, from across cultures, and let's
Yeah.
combine it together and see where we go. Should we jump into some questions from Patreon and
Sure,
the
sure.
community?
Whatever you want, man. It's only 6 o'clock for me, so you're.
All right, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Well, this might be another hour.
Okay, sure.
Hopefully not, but I do have quite a few questions. People like you, Ryan. People want to hear about what you have to
Well,
say.
that makes me happy.
Yeah. And for everyone listening as well, if you want to join a fast-growing social hub of researchers and experiences, please consider signing up to become a Patreon of Project Unity. You'll gain access to our Discord server where we all communicate with each other, we share ideas, we share research. It's a really good space for discussions on all sorts of topics. So a link to the Project Unity Patreon can be found in the description box below. So the first one up is from Max Power. Max Power actually had a few questions for you. First one is, can you expand at all on the lady's prophecy that it will get darker until spring 2026 when the world will enter a new age? How do we maintain hope when already now things are quite awful?
See, that's a very good question. Like, I understand exactly what he's asking, but I just want to clarify. Like, here's the thing: the lady never gave a date. The lady, all she gave was the alignment, the red star aligning with the gaze of the Sphinx in a constellation Leo just before dawn. Right now, some other researchers have said it's September 2026. Initially, that's what they said, and then some other researchers said no, it's actually March 2026. Do I know that anything is going to happen in 2026? No. Will the alignment happen? I personally don't know. I mean, this researcher said it, this researcher said it. I'm confused at this point. But I will say this. According to the ancient Hindu astrological star chart, remember we talked about the four yugas and how they had this complex system of like phases of human consciousness going through these cycles. Right now, according to that star chart, we're in the Kali Yuga, which is the age of darkness. According to this like 12,000 odd year star chart, the Kali Yuga ends in what we know as 2025. So I think that's weird. I think that's weird that the Hindu Kali Yuga
weird
is kind of there's kind of a connection there. I think that really the only thing you can do is just hang on to hope and just realize like these beings are real. Many people around the world are seeing them, not just my dad and me and my family. Yes, we've seen them. Yes, we've seen them in a very extreme way, but we're not the only ones who see them. They're very real. Go on the internet, look up orb videos, look up UFO videos. Yeah, they're real.
Yeah.
What they're saying,
they're real.
Right. Yeah. Jay has seen them. What they're saying is real. And, that's really all I have to go on. It's just hope that what they're saying is true. And you just got to find that in yourself to figure that part out, unfortunately.
Well, it does feel like to me things are so intense that they can't last much longer. So I feel like the 25, 26 could make sense. Hell, maybe slightly later, but it's it's this idea of like things are just so crazy now. I just don't think that it can hold on for like 10, 20 years of the same old
Yeah.
bullshit. Like we're in the circling of a vortex right now. We're kind of getting to that point. Another one from Max: does Chris Bledsoe watch the news, or has he turned away from that? Since he's such an empath, I can imagine that news is really hard for him.
But yeah, there was a time like when he was watching the news pretty regularly, but lately, like especially through COVID, because he has no immune system, he has rheumatoid arthritis, and he was taking a chemotherapy pill for like 5 or 6 years or something
Right,
like that, that destroyed his immune system literally. So he was following that very heavily, and it took a massive toll on him. Lately, we haven't really talked about the news at all. I think he's kind of like turned away from it, but he's particularly wrapped up in his grandson, my nephew. So a much brighter days lately.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Last question from Max is quite simply: the Sphinx, what is it? Who built it?
I have no clue. I mean, just as much as the next guy, I would like to think that the Atlanteans, like I said earlier in the main show, I believe that it could have always been there, and over time has been eroded through, various means. I don't know, whatever happens with erosion. But I do know that it's probably older than what we're told in the mainstream understanding of history. I don't know what it is. Well, I mean, what I think it is it's sitting there waiting to point at these astrological alignments that signify major times of change.
Yeah,
I don't know who built it. I honestly don't.
Yeah, I mean, Graham Hancock feels very similar to you in terms of the alignments, because I think it was they figured out that you know what, I'm not even going to say because I'll mess it up, but I remember that Graham Hancock was talking about the whole alignment of the star systems with the Sphinx. So it's very interesting. I mean, the whole Egyptian architecture, like the pyramids being on true north, and it's all just a little bit too coincidental, isn't it? For them to
Yeah.
not have some sort of astronomical knowledge going on
Oh,
there.
they definitely did. And mathematical knowledge.
And mathematical knowledge. So the next one is from Brett, and Brett says that he would be keen to hear if Ryan has any ideas on what the great deception may be that the lady warned his father about. So we've kind of gone through that a bit, I guess, but if you've got anything extra.
Yeah, well, for start, we did say it again in the main show, but I'll clarify exactly what I think that great deception is. I think that great deception has been a multi-generational thing that's been going on for thousands of years, including with institutions like we just talked about, the Vatican, certain secret societies. I don't think all. I think some of them are truly good individuals, but they keep the knowledge secret, not for like means of control, but just because, like if the way that we are as a human race right now, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are the dominant religions, and they have their mold, and anything that challenges that mold is evil or abhorrent or whatever. So I could see why some of this knowledge needs a level of secrecy, so they're not literally like killed or whatever. Anyway, so what I think the Great Deception is the concept that all this bad stuff that's happening in the world, let me phrase it this way. It's being made to happen to make humanity be in such a fearful state. Like, even if you look at history, haven't the Rothschilds funded every war, every major conflict since like the 1500s? They make these things happen. It's not just accident. I don't think countries in modern society just, we're going to war. I don't think that's true. I think it's all made to happen. It's very scripted, just like the news is very scripted. Anybody who has a hard time swallowing that pill, just do research on American history. You'll see that the CIA purchased the majority of American media in 1952. It's called Operation Mockingbird. What you see on TV and in the entertainment world and in the news world, it's like a play. It's like a script. And, if you sit there and, not the person asking the question, again, just speaking in the second person, if you sit there and eat that up, you're being tricked. I think that's the great deception. They're tricking you to understand their version of reality, which is a very hopeless, dark, bleak, random sequence of events that's always the next impending danger or cataclysm. And by the way, we all came from a biological ooze that crawled out of the ocean, and we're completely random, and an explosion happened on an infinite particle 13 billions of years ago that created every bit of life in the universe. It's all random. It's all meaningless. That's the great deception. There is no God. There is no consciousness. That's the great deception, right? The scientific paradigm in the last 100 years has been like Darwinism, materialistic reduction. It's all climate change now. It's all these ecological disasters are going to destroy us. I don't think that's true. I think that everything in the last 100 years that's pushed on us as far as like threats and things like that, it's all part of a deception to keep us totally in fear and out of harmony with the rest of the human race.
Next one is Mitch, and this is regarding the regression tapes of your dad. There is a moment where your dad mentions someone in the CIA believes he is the reincarnation of Merlin. Is Ryan able to expand on this at all?
That's not in the regression. I probably mentioned that as a side note in one of my regression episodes. That's not actually in the regression.
Right. Okay.
If you want me to be honest with you, they've said some weird things, man. They've said that they think he might be, and again, this is not us saying that this was the CIA. They just make these weird comments in private. But they've hinted, reincarnation of Moses, reincarnation of Merlin. Dad actually did have a regression, and okay, so back in 2007 when he had his experience, he started having dreams of being Galileo locked up in like because Galileo in real history was locked up for the rest of his life for creating the telescope, locked up by the Vatican, mind you. And Dad started having these dreams of being like Galileo. And he later had a regression, and this is not a public regression. He's had 4 or 5 at this point, and it's only audio only us, Dad and I have heard it, and the regressionist herself. And it was one of the things she said, like, are you the reincarnation of anybody historically significant? And the only thing that came up was maybe Galileo. And Diana Walsh Pasulka and Timothy Taylor, when they went to the Vatican and that little saga in their book, American Cosmic, for that reason, for the insinuation that Dad could be the reincarnation of Galileo. I mean, I know it's weird, but whatever, we're here. They took a photo of my dad and they put it beside the manuscript of Galileo in the secret Vatican archives. So someone did make a comment about Merlin.
Yeah, I remember your dad telling me about that when I interviewed him, actually.
Yeah.
Very interesting situation, that whole thing. Next one's from Pro Illusionist, and we've kind of covered this, but just in case we can glean anything else, ask him what he means by "it's always darkest before the dawn." Does he mean that he believes that very soon the revelations are coming?
Yeah, I do. I think that in the next few years, or at least within the next decade, we're going to have some major expansions of consciousness. If that date on the alignment happening in 2026 is true, great. I don't know that for sure. I have not verified that myself. All I'm going on is the word of other researchers. But I have hope that it really is that year, like they say it is. But it's always darkest before the dawn is an ancient metaphor, which actually comes from Egypt. There's an entity named Kek that is like the symbol of the darkness of night just before dawn. Like things are always seem to be the most intense, the most rough, the most negative, whatever, before a great period of transformation or change. Yeah. And that's the same for the human spirit, like what we talked about earlier.
Yeah, well,
it's always darkest before the dawn.
That's it. Like we said, we drew from a couple of personal experiences before talking about this, and then you look at the world, and we were just saying a minute ago how it just feels like this can't go on for much longer. So it probably is an impending thing that's arriving in faster increments. But always darkest before the dawn. Next one is from Mike Hotel Echo. And he says, can you ask Ryan whether he and Jeremy would consider regression hypnosis to uncover more knowledge they might carry within them? So you guys are actually getting it yourself.
We've actually been talking about that, and I have come into contact with somebody in my town who is accredited and like seems to be legit, and that is in the works. It just costs so much money right now. It's like $250 for a session or something like that. I'm just waiting for the right time, but that is actually a very serious plan of mine, is to have a regression. I've never had a hypnotic regression about the events that I've experienced with the phenomenon. And I think that could really help me, just like it helped my dad.
Yeah, I've considered it as well. People have said to me that I should get it. part of me, I suppose,
You
is a
should.
little. Yeah, I should, right? I should. I really should actually.
I think it could help everybody. You know, just because some people might not have had like paranormal experiences doesn't mean that there aren't profound insights about their life
Yeah.
that they couldn't gain from it.
Well, this, I mean, for me, because I think the reason why I was a little nervous about doing it, and it could be like a false correlation. It's just a weird anomaly that occurred at the same time as my contact experience, my first contact experience with. Do you know about this, where the cloud kind of dissipated and there was a triangular formation? Have I told you about this before?
I believe you told me that before, but
Yeah,
just
I've said
refresh
it.
me. Yeah,
I've said it
yeah.
loads of times on like interviews and stuff, but basically, like the first time was when I was out in my garden. This wasn't the first time I'd seen strange things. I'd seen flash bulbs and little things in the sky that seemed strange, but the most intense experience, and the first one with these orange orbs, was where this cloud literally floated across the sky and melted above. I'm turning a long story into a very short story.
Right.
But this cloud like came above my head, basically, like up in the sky, dissipated within an instant, just kind of fizzled out into nothing. And within it was a triangular formation of like 25, like maybe 30 orange orbs of light in a triangular
Wow.
formation. Yeah, that was the first thing that I was really exposed to in a
That's intense, man.
dramatic way. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. And the next day I woke up and I got out of the shower and I was drying myself off, and I looked down at my arm, and immediately, and I'll put these up on screen and I can send you the photos. I immediately saw these marks. It was literally like a triangle shape. It was like cigarette burns. It was a three dots in a very clear triangle, but they were really profound on my arm, like bright red. And when I was looking at them and I kind of closely observed them, they actually had like the appearance of scarred over skin. There was no bump or pain or like I didn't feel anything. There was literally no scab or any sort of damage. It looked like they'd been there for ages. It was like this little scar tissue layer, and they lasted like that on my arm for well over a year. Like well over a year,
Mm-hmm.
they were on my arm,
Wow.
and they're still there, but they've faded over time from like skin regeneration, and obviously just like that's just the way it goes. But they're still there a little bit, but they were there for a long time, and it was just the way that it happened. Just after the experience, a lot of people said, "Oh, well, maybe you were taken, maybe you were this, that, and the other," and I think it kind of
Mm-hmm.
got into my head, and I was a little bit nervous about doing regression because of it, but I probably should do it.
Yeah, you should. You definitely should.
Yeah, yeah. It's a
It's a
weird
very
one.
relaxing, meditative experience. I've had a regression. I've had a past life regression. I've just never had what you're talking about and
Yeah,
like what
yeah.
my dad has had, and it's a very pleasant experience. It's nothing scary. What you see on the movies is not the way it is. You're not going to be screaming in terror. My
Oh
dad
no,
cried, but
it's not necessarily that. It's just I guess I was worried about, oh, am I going to remember things about this that make me go, holy shit, I'm never going out and doing that again. I can't believe that's what actually happened to me. I didn't realize. Yeah, I don't want that to happen, but
well, look
I
at my
also
dad.
don't.
Look at how my dad reacted to it. It empowered him and gave
Yeah,
him a deeper understanding, and
yeah.
it's a good thing.
I think I'll probably end up doing it, to be honest. I think that it's probably important for me to get as much information about those experiences as I can, because the
Yeah.
human memory is a fragile thing, and there could be
Hmm.
a lot there that I don't know. So anyway, moving back into questions. Next one we've got, let me just find it, is by Disarray, and they want to ask if you know anything about the White Brotherhood and its connections to Helena Blavatsky.
I know about it. I don't like personally study it a great deal. I know exactly what it is, and it's the concept that there was like this ancient society of people that particularly Jesus was a member of, that got initiated into the knowledge of the one true God, Amun Ra, inside the temple. And I could be wrong here. This is how I remember it. I don't really study this a whole lot. And from what I remember, they get initiated in the Temple of Alexandria or something, if that sounds right, into the knowledge of one God. And like when they die, they become these ascended masters and things like that. Do I know if it's real? I don't know. It's cool as hell.
Yeah, yeah. And they also ask if you know anything about Melchizedek and his lineage.
Yes, I do. The name Melchizedek has esoteric significance. For example, the name Zedek is the ancient, it's either Babylonian or Canaanite, I can't remember, but the name itself actually means Jupiter. And if you study the etymology of the name and how Jesus actually in one of the scriptures mentioned Melchizedek as being the great priest, or no, I'm sorry, this is how it goes. Jesus is mentioned as being the new version of the grand high priest of the order of Melchizedek. So there's some sort of esoteric significance between Jesus and Melchizedek. And when you break down the etymology of his name, it means something to the effect of like priest of Jupiter. Right. So very cool stuff there.
That's cool. See, there's so many journeys to take.
Edgar Cayce, in one of his readings, said that, there was this, the true meaning of like what Christ actually is not that it was the man Jesus, but it's actually this eternal spirit that incarnates at every like major age or like the cusp of humanity going through transformation, brings these incredible shifts of consciousness, like Zoroaster, or technically according to Edgar Cayce, Zoroaster's father was one, Melchizedek, Enoch, Adam, Jesus, etc. Oh, Hermes Trismegistus and things like that. So
John Majerowski wants to know, is Ron Pandolfi still messing with your family?
No comment.
No comment. All right. Now, I've had a few people ask this. Is anyone in your family, including, of course, your dad, been in touch with or considered getting in touch with Dr. Gary Nolan due to his interest in the neurological changes that can occur from being a close contact experiencer?
No.
Have you thought, okay, you're not interested in Gary Nolan?
They come to us. These people come to us. We don't go to them. It's always been that way. They always come to us. He's never come to us.
He's never come to you. Okay, interesting. That surprises me. I would imagine. Okay, well, we'll see. Maybe in the future, right? Next one.
Maybe if he came to us, maybe.
Yeah. Next one comes from Joe Westcott. Ask him if he's considered that the visitations might be demonic or manipulative. They seem to take the positive impression, only ruling out a potentially deceptive nature.
I think that is a very uninformed question. Here's why. Because for 15 years, we've been out here talking about this and how we've received like negativity from people and all these, outside sources and the CIA and the government. And we haven't even like considered that there's like a deceptive element to this or anything. Yeah, of course we've considered it. But like at this point in the game, if people are still asking us that, I'm like, next. Like we're past that, dude. We know the beings are real. We believe them. Thank you for the question. But no, 100% we believe these beings. We believe these entities. There's no part of my mind that computes anymore. That I've seen them perform miracles on people on our property, healing people of cancers, other terminal diseases that they should never have recovered from. I've seen them provide, show up in front of people physically at our property. They see these orbs and then they go home and situations in their life are resolved and totally just transform people's lives into very beautiful, positive success stories. I don't think that there's any indication that these entities are evil. I think that is part of that great deception that I told you about, that like the media, these institutions, these powerful organizations that kind of like are pulling the puppet strings for humanity, they want people thinking like that. I don't think these entities are evil.
Well, I mean, I have to agree. I've had people, especially quite early on when I was talking about consciousness and my contact experiences, and I was advising people to actually try and engage in these types of methodologies. I had people come out of the woodwork claiming to be intelligence, warning me that I was sending my thoughts out into the void and you don't know what's going to respond, and you're attracting these negative entities, and they were trying to put me off the idea of doing this. And I have to admit that for me personally, the journey through learning about consciousness, then finding out about contact, engaging in contact, having success, that's all been incredibly powerful for me in a good way, like in terms of like an endearing, oh my gosh, this is real. And it's provided me with a lot of optimism. And I think that, of course, being cautious, that's fair. It's fair to be cautious. But I think looking for deception where there isn't evidence for any, it's kind of like
that's exactly what I'm talking about, is people are trained to just always look for deception.
Right? It's like,
it's backwards.
They're doing all these healings, they're doing all these great things. Yeah, but it might be a deception. It might be a multi-dimensional chess game. It's like, okay.
Yeah, so these beings are caught in this web of lies where they're just healing all these people to keep convincing us. It's like, dude, I'm sorry, but I see that question a lot, particularly my DMs. and I'm just like, oh, next.
Yeah, well, I'm the same when it comes to kind of contact. It's like, well, how do you know you're not
I appreciate the
receiving
question,
negative?
though. I
No.
do appreciate the
Yeah,
question,
no,
but
absolutely appreciate the
yeah.
question, mate. But it's no, I just find that I agree with you because I've had the same thing thrown at me all the time about engaging with the phenomenon through contact. It's like, how do you know you're,
Yeah.
not attracting evil stuff? It's like, well, maybe you just shouldn't focus on that being your main priority and it won't
Yeah.
come towards you in that way. But yeah, so good question, appreciate it, but I think I agree with you on the response. Next question is from Lagitix. What does Ryan think about astral projection and lucid dreaming? Is he a projector or a lucid dreamer? I think most contacts with non-human consciousness happen on the astral level, and disclosure can probably come faster if people get in touch with lucid dreaming and astral projection.
I think that is true. I think that the majority of contact with these entities happens on an unconscious level, like maybe when you're asleep, if you could like astral project or get into very high states of meditation. Now, I do, particularly lately, I practice meditation. I'm really trying to dive deep into that. I just think it's something I've avoided it for all these years. I'm very ADHD. My thoughts are always racing. I never want to sit down and just like be quiet. But I found that that's not what meditation is really about. It's really more so about just trying to not think at all. It's not about trying to think to be quiet. It's just about trying to not think at all. And since I've realized that and made that switch, it's really helped me. And I do find that particularly when meditating, nothing funky, nothing like astral traveling or my spirit leaving my body or whatever. I do find that I tend to receive like incredible insights and incredible intuition. I think that, sure. I mean, I think anybody could astral travel if they knew the actual correct way to do it. Have I tried it? No. I personally don't feel like I need it because every time I go home and visit my dad, I'm seeing orbs in the sky. I don't have that like need. I don't have that obsessive need to like try and figure out if there's really something beyond the veil. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I've seen it. And what I'm more so focused on in my daily present life is like, how can I make myself better and like more positive and happy so that I can do this project, Bledsoe Said So, and like do what I personally have the power to do to in some way, big or small, benefit humanity. So like, no, I don't really try things like that. Like I don't really try to like get to these like super altered states of consciousness through like lucid dreaming or things like that. And the only reason, not that I'm scared of it, I'm just not interested. I think it's real. I do think it's real.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate that perspective. I find I agree with it as well because especially with meditation, like meditation for me was a weird concept until literally like you, I realized it's just the observation of silence. It's just
yeah. It's not about like I got to be quiet. That's how I used to think it was. Like I can't think, but really it's not. It's just like let yourself think. Just kind of like just be still and just like breathe.
I find, and I don't know if you've got to this before because I'm not an advanced meditator, but I found that I've got to states where I almost feel like I'm like at the back of my normal mind and I'm observing thoughts coming in, but they're having no impact on like my calmness and my serenity. It's really strange. It's almost like I'm just looking at thoughts happening in a brain, not so much being in the brain and having thoughts rushing around. It's like this weird level of separation sometimes takes place where it's like, I'm having thoughts. Anyway, back to
Yeah. But like the way that I have come to understand meditation is like, your consciousness could maybe even be understood as like a signal. Like that's one of the things that Tim Taylor told my dad is that the human body is like an antenna.
Yeah.
And in his words, it was like it's sending and receiving a signal from somewhere out there, right? He indicated that these beings, these entities, the divinity, the divine, whatever, we're actually, our bones, our hair, our physical biological body is actually a transmitter and a receiver for some sort of signal to a higher intelligence. Now, the way that I understand it is that, like I just said, like your body is a channel for consciousness, right? Now, particularly about meditation, I think it's about clearing that channel. So like if let's say you're an anxious person like me, I actually tend to be a pretty anxious person on like I said, ADHD, racing thoughts. I'm just very busy minded. I deal with life. Right. Yeah. And I think it's a blessing and a curse, but I tend to realize that like when my brain gets heavy with all of these really fast racing thoughts that are kind of like clogging up this channel, I don't really have the ability or the mindset to really get that like profound
100%.
inspiration that I need. But when I do things like meditation, I feel like it clears me out to where thoughts start coming in that I don't typically have. It's not like a voice speaks to me and it's like, I am God, this is your inspiration. No, it's just like you just feel inside like, wow,
intuitive.
I haven't thought about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think everybody has that ability for sure. I think meditation is a beautiful, wonderful thing. A wonderful, wonderful thing.
Dude, that's why I've stepped back from social media. That exact same feeling of just feeling overwhelmed with information. And like, there'll be times where I'm like, I'll set my laptop down and I'm lying in bed and it's just like, bzz, like just I can't. It just feels like I'm gonna explode. So it's you gotta step back from that stuff. And meditation is one of those things.
I'm particularly addicted to gaining knowledge. Like, I know that sounds silly, but like I'm always researching these these esoteric things, the secret societies, or like, meditation, chakras, blah, blah, blah. I'm always reading. And I find that like sometimes I just got to take a break, get off social media, don't like really absorb much of anything, and just like take a step back and just reset.
Yeah, totally. A few more questions to go through.
Okay. Sure.
So the next one is from Christine Grindle. Ryan talks about interacting with light beings on his podcast, brackets, which is always a fun listen, close brackets. I was wondering if he could expand upon that. How many beings? Are they the same beings making repeated visits? Do they give him information in the same way that the lady speaks to his dad? And if so, what? Thank you both for the work you're doing. And thank you for the question, Christine.
Very interesting question, although I am disappointed to respond in this way, but I don't think it's humanly possible for anybody to know like exactly how many beings they are. Are they the same one? They show up and they're glowing and they're made of light, right? And only two have given a name, to be honest with you. One of them, the lady, she gave her name Hathor, and then she said the hidden one is Amun-Ra. And then the other entity, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this story, but in 2019, Dad saw a being over our pond, and it started as an orb. It gave its name was Michael. That's the only two beings that have given their name. The rest of them, we see them all the time. They don't necessarily always like communicate. They show up, they flash, they do these little shows for us. It's like they're communicating, but it's mostly nonverbal. I have seen entities in my bedroom, literally like with my eyes, and they don't speak all the time. And, it's just the way that it is. Do they communicate with me in the same way? I suspect that if they do, I have not had like the level of hypnotic regression that my father has had. And I probably have these like trauma mechanisms in my mind that don't allow me to process them in the same way. But I'm wondering if a hypnotic regression would maybe open me up a little bit more, or maybe that's just wishful thinking. And I've never communicated face to face with an entity. And either way, I'm fine with that. But no, presently, as I understand things and I'm aware of things, that has never happened to me. Who knows? Maybe I could have a very revealing hypnotic regression. I think a lot of people could. Like a surprising amount of people really have had these entity interactions that they're not consciously aware of,
Yeah. Ian Valdez asks, would love to hear his thoughts on magical realities or esotericism. All the weird stuff his family went through had to perk the esoterically inclined ears of some government officials. Maybe he was, or maybe he has an idea of what they think/believe is really going on. So we've kind of covered that, but anything you got to add?
Sure. So last year, there were some individuals who I will not name that were harassing me on the internet. And anyway, so they were really just trying to like intimidate me through Twitter DMs, believe it or not. And I know they were who they say they were. It's complicated. I'm not going to get into it. But anyway, I called Jim Simivan the next day, and he kind of like calmed me down, and he was like, dude, don't worry about it. They can't hurt you. They're just trying to terrorize and intimidate you. Just ignore them. And I was like, that, sure. Easier said than done, but sure. And after that, he actually was very gracious and kind enough to stay on the phone with me for like another 45 minutes and just shoot the shit and just kind of like chat, catch up with me about life. And I kind of like told him like, man, I've thought about a lot of the things you told me that one night, like the night I referenced when he told me about like they understand. When I say they, I mean like the CIA and the intelligence collection agencies. they understand that they're interdimensional beings. And we were kind of like getting that ball rolling in conversation. Had like an hour-long chat about esoterica and how he's familiar with like the Gnostics, Helena Blavatsky. I can't remember every esoteric thing that he mentioned, but we had a very long, riveting chat. And it kind of ended up with him concluding to me that he believes that there probably was a precursor race of godlike beings in the ancient past that we have descended from, and now we're these more like limited physical beings. Very different from the mainstream UFO agenda, but that's the kind of chats you have when, that's the sobering chats that you have when you have these experiences, and then the government flocks to your house and they prod you and poke you and ask you all these questions. The conversations are different than what you see on TV, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because I'm really and truly like trying to show a window into the world that I've lived and provide a different perspective. But yeah, they're very interested in the occult. And Tim Taylor, very interested in the occult as well. He talked about like Jack Parsons, particularly with Diana Pasulka, which obviously we talked about that on the main show, has ties to Aleister Crowley. And Diana Pasulka revealed recently on Twitter, before she was like hacked or whatever, that at certain launches, they face cardinal directions depending on what equinox or solstice it is. And they have pagan rituals celebrating the thinning of the veil when they do these launches. So very occult in the high echelons of the intelligence community.
Yeah. This is the stuff that the nuts and bolts people are going to have to wrap their head around at some point.
They just close their ears. Right? Because it's like, that's not the science, bro.
That's not cool. The material engineering that I like and observe, but that's like, as we were saying before, it's like, it's not about the craft. It's about what's controlling these things, what's piloting this stuff, It's,
and it's really about why they're coming, though.
And why,
it's like, that's how I see it.
Yeah. No, I see it the same way, dude. Good question. Thank you for that one.
Yeah, great question.
So the next one we have, and there's three left. Sure. Chris Clancy asks, we now live in the conditions for which that prophecy seems quite plausible, referring to the prophetic messages the lady gave to your dad. Chris Bledsoe said that he didn't want to talk about the negative aspects, but we're at a point now where it seems that information could be useful for preserving life and trying to keep people safe. It'd be nice to have it laid out in plain terms as much as possible.
He saw war. And, like certain things like earthquakes and, it's just like, think from my perspective, or as particularly my dad's perspective, like, what if you saw these things and you were afraid to tell them to the world because in some way it could cause it to happen? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
There's just some things he saw that he doesn't want to see happen, I guess. But like, yeah, I mean, let's just put it this way. He saw some things, and the lady said that they don't all have to happen, that if we change and if we shift to a state of love. But like, he saw some pretty devastating things. And that's why she was like, you have to go tell your story, to try to shift collective consciousness. But yeah, he saw war. I don't really want to go much deeper than that, but he saw like what would appear to be, pretty much. Yeah. But it's being made to happen.
Yeah.
To subjugate humanity, to mind control us, to trick us, to sort of like break our will and get us to just be in a constant state of fear and depression and darkness. Because that's what these negative psychic entities feed on, is our suffering and our fear.
So the next one is Exoterrestrial. Now, they've done some podcasts about this. They've been interviewed a couple times. This person's been looking into the various connections with the appearance of ladies in white many times.
Oh, cool.
With bulls. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I'll send you a link actually afterwards and you can check, because I think they'd really like to speak to you, to be honest. They've been finding all these connections between ladies in white and bulls, bovine creatures, and the four colors that are often associated with these occurrences.
What's the podcast called?
Well, no, he's called Exoterrestrial, but he did one. I think he did one on Strange Recon podcast. Okay, well, if you type in Strange Recon podcast, I've done a couple interviews with those guys. They're really good. I'm pretty sure he was on there recently.
Okay, so like a guest.
Yeah, as a guest. Yeah, he doesn't run a podcast.
Okay.
But he's done a couple of interviews with he's been doing a lot of research into the ladies, the bulls. There's four colors that are often associated with these occurrences, and he wanted me to mention the women in white and all the connections he's found with these four colors. He said he doesn't think Ryan is aware of how many there are. For instance, I've never heard him mention the Shepherd of Hermas, where the colors appear on a UFO, though he does know about the white buffalo calf woman, where the colors appear as the Native American medicine wheel. I'd love to hear his thoughts about this pattern of occurrences given his father's claim. He also goes on to mention, I've discovered a lot about these women in white beings. They have been influencing belief systems throughout history across the world. They pilot UFOs, they appear as women in white and transform into bovine animals, and they have a flag of four colors. So that's kind of, I'm just going to throw that out there and let you respond to that.
Yeah, very interesting. No, I've never studied that. It's like, when an entity shows up and it says its name is Hathor, like the first thought in your mind is, I'm going to look up Hathor. And it showed the pyramids, it showed the Sphinx, it talked about Amun-Ra, and it even mentioned the name Pitta. And yeah, the majority of my time has been spent studying the esoteric, the occult, Egyptian, these extra belief systems that the mainstream doesn't necessarily have access to. They're not educated on them or whatever. It's never crossed my mind till like, she showed up as a bull. Let me study bulls. Like that's just never crossed my mind. We're in it. It's me and my dad. We're talking. She said this. Let me look this up, Dad. It's just like what is it? Zopha terrestrial.
Yeah. It's Exopha. So XOPHA. Just so you know.
Yeah. So we're Exopha terrestrial hears about it on the internet and then has this thought. That's cool. I never had that thought. Maybe our thoughts can correlate and we can figure something out. But no, I mean, I've never heard of the Hermes calf woman or whatever because I've been studying Egypt.
Yeah, the Shepherd of Hermas.
The Shepherd of Hermas. Never heard of it. I've heard of the Lady of Fatima, the big Catholic one. She didn't appear as a bull, but she was a lady. And again, like we weren't typically interested in the bull symbolism. We were interested more in like the divine feminine aspect of that, because to me, that's far more important. The bull thing is cool. That's like referencing, nature, forces of nature and whatnot. But we were more interested in the fact that like, wow, there's a divine feminine. There's what the ancients called a mother goddess. Like that archetypal energy is truly real. It's to us, it's been about that.
I wonder if the bull represents the divine masculine.
Well, according to why Hathor is depicted as a bull, it's because she's known as like the cosmic mother whose udders nourish, like the Milky Way galaxy. It's like her udders nourishing the cosmos with milk. But even though a bull is a male. I know, but it's just the way it is. It's cow symbolism.
Yeah. A few people wanted to get your take real quick on the World Economic Forum, Davos Group, Great Reset. What do you think this move by the global 0.1% represents?
I think I've been talking about him this entire episode. Main show,
I know.
Yeah, like
they're trying to take over the fucking world, people.
Yeah, they are. They are pushing the Great Deception. Like I cannot be. It's a wonderful question, but like I cannot be more explicit about this. These 1% groups are the real threat. It is not these entities. It's not. Entities have been with us and created us and have interacted with us much longer than these groups. It's just very subtle. You're driving down the street and you have a profound thought in your head and then a deer runs across your car. That could have been an entity interaction. According to the Dogon tribe, the 5,000-year-old Dogon tribe, who were very advanced as far as spirituality is concerned. Tiny little village in Africa, or a little tribe.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That had incredibly profound astrological knowledge, spiritual knowledge. And that was one of their main beliefs, is like the entities interact with you in a way that is very subtle. They can kind of like influence animals. You have synchronicities. They didn't have that word, but it was the concept. And they're not the ones that we should fear, like the 1% want you to think. It's the 1%. It's big tech, it's big pharma, it's the oligarchs, it's the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The World Economic Forum, the Council of Foreign Relations, all that crap. Facebook.
It's all there as a part of the Great Deception.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it doesn't take much to realize that it can certainly all be utilized that way, especially the internet and social
Yeah.
media. And
Bayer
it's,
Monsanto, they sprayed all
oh
our crops with glyphosate.
my
And,
God,
and just like just in every facet of our
yeah.
reality, they have their grips on control. The public education system in America was actually funded and created by John Rockefeller in like the 1920s
Oh
or 30s. People
shit,
don't even know that.
really? Really?
That's why I keep saying the Rockefeller school system. Yeah, he created
Yeah.
the standardized education system.
Wow.
Every level of reality is controlled in some way by these groups. The religious system all came from, like church as we know it today, even though there's Protestant sects now. It's it came from the Vatican, creating that structure. And then in the 1500s, Martin Luther and all those people, they split off and they did it their own way, but they kept the same book, they kept the same beliefs, and just kind of like did it a different way, but it's the same core thing.
Dude, this has been awesome. I said 2 hours I'd keep you. I've kept you for 2 hours and 40 minutes. We have gone on a
Yeah.
pretty decent marathon here. It has been so good though. I've really enjoyed this.
Same. I've
Yeah,
enjoyed it a
yeah.
lot.
Well, look, I would tell everyone once again to check out the Bledsoe Said So podcast. Links will be in the description. Such a good podcast. Definitely needs more support. So please, I'd recommend you go check out Ryan's episodes. And yeah, man, it's just good talking to you. I consider you a friend from afar. And
Same.
we're just trying to figure this all out. And I always appreciate your perspective. So thank you for giving us so much time.
Yeah, no problem. And no pressure, but would love to, if you're up to it, have you on
Yes.
our show. Do cool. Yeah, we'll be in touch.
You don't need to twist my arm, dude. I'll
Okay.
happily come onto your show at some point.